crickets leave a mess.
They left pieces on there.
Ooh, I don't think that's pieces.
It's got something with an S at the
I
end
think
of it.
that's pieces.
Yeah. There's all kinds of stuff in here.
Hey, Rudy, come here.
Yeah.
Come here. Look at that.
They in there?
Oh, look at this.
What's left of the gecko? Or what could have been a gecko?
What are they doing?
You're talking about crickets.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I just had crickets. I was eating the crickets down here.
Crickets.
Gecko, there's some pieces in there, too.
It is 7 o'clock. We do have a quorum. We'll call the city council meeting in order. First item on the agenda tonight is the invocation given by myself, and then the pledge of both American and Texas flags given by Mayor Pro Tem Durham. Most gracious God Almighty, we take a moment to pause to give you praise, honor, and glory that you so rightly deserve. We thank you for this country you've given us to live in. We thank you for the blessings that you give us each and every day of our life. We ask that you give us wisdom and courage as we try to govern this country that you give us, that we use your wisdom and your courage in making our decisions. We do what is right and just for our fellow men, just as you have done what is right and just for us. We ask your special blessing on all those who are hungry, who are hurting, who are sick, and who are oppressed, and all of those who fight for justice and freedom throughout the world and here at home. We ask that you watch over them, protect them and their families. We ask all of this in your most precious name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Mr. City Manager, would you accompany me down to the podium, please, sir? I have a couple of presentations that we're going to do tonight, and I asked the city manager to come down for the first one because I think he's the only one old enough here to accept this award and know the true meaning of it.
It can be debated.
You know, Louisville has been around for a number of years, but a lot of people don't know the history of Louisville and don't know how many years it's been around. So tonight we're going to issue a proclamation because this is actually our birthday. So, whereas in 1844, the Hallford and King families, notice I said Hallford, Hallford, and King families, Mr. King, were the first to settle in the area of modern-day Louisville, namely the Holford, Holford, Prairie Settlement. And whereas in 1855, Bastille Lewis purchased the Hallford land and renamed the nascent settlement Louisville after his own family name. And whereas in an effort to better protect the community after a series of devastating Main Street fires, Louisville's 815 residents held an election on January 15, 1925 to decide the issue of municipal incorporation. And whereas by a margin of 109 in favor to 92 opposed, voters approved incorporation as the city of Louisville, and whereas Louisville has grown as a community since that day in 1925, currently boasting a population of about 35,000 households and accounting for more than 100,000 people. Now, therefore, I, Dean Euchert, Mayor of the City of Louisville, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of January 2011 as Louisville's 86th birthday, proclaim this third day of January 2011. Mr. King, could you mutter a few words here, sir?
Well, on behalf of all the Kings, it would have been Kingsville had it not been for that little town in South Texas. But I don't know who those Kings were. They're not part of my King branch, I'm sure, since we didn't arrive in Texas until 1973. But, it was a glorious day. But that is the basic history, and it's great that we understand and know that history. And the fact that the city was incorporated in 1925 and managed to function without a city manager until the 60s is baffling to me. It did manage to do that, but we're glad they did eventually adopt that charter. On behalf of the council, I'll be happy to accept the proclamation. Thank you.
Happy birthday. Piece of cake. Where's the cake? Okay, remember last month we started this, and we're going to be doing this every month. Like I said, I've worked with our principal at Louisville High School, Mr. Burns, and he's been so gracious to work with me and make sure that we're able to honor some of our Louisville Independent School District students here at our council meeting. Like I said last month, there's so many times that we hear a lot of negative comment about our youth. I think it's important that we stress about some of the wonderful youth that we have in our community and what they do in our community and what great citizens they are and the input that they give into our community. So tonight, we're going to celebrate with three of them. So if we would, first we'd have Andrew Reinhardt, who is his parents are Susan Green and Patrick Reinhardt. If you would come forward first, Andrew. Andrew, it's good to have you with us tonight, sir. We thank you for all that you've done to the community and your prayer here with us. Thank you, sir. I want to congratulate his parents, too. Where are his parents? Are his parents here tonight? Would y'all just stand and let us recognize you also? We're glad you're here tonight. Thank you very much. I know you're very proud of this young man, as we all are. Louisville hereby recognizes and honors Andrew Reinhardt for his outstanding achievements as a Louisville Independent School District student and senior drum major in the following events and activities: All-Region Band for 4 years, All-Area Band for 2 years, All-State Band for 1 year, Greater Dallas Youth Orchestra, 2 years, National Honor Society member, AB Honor Roll, and top 20 of the Louisville High School senior class, issued on this third day of January 2011. Thank you very much, Andy. Congratulations. You want to just stay up here? Because we're going to group picture here in just a minute, if you don't mind. Okay, now if we could have Lindsay Baker come up. Her parents are Mark and Wendy Baker. Thank you so much for all that you've done in our community, what you've done at the high school. And being an excellent role model, we certainly appreciate all that you do. Thank you, ma'am. Louisville hereby recognizes and honors Lindsay Baker for her outstanding achievements as a Louisville Independent School District student and junior drum major in the following events and activities: consistent superior ratings at the LISD Solo and Ensemble Festival, AB Honor Roll, Circle of Friends member, something dear to my heart, and top 25% of a LHS junior class, issued on this third day of January 2011. Thank you. And I take it you're her proud parents, right? We're so glad to have y'all here tonight, too. I know you're as proud of her as we are. You'll stand up here, too. We'll get a group picture in a minute. And if we could also have Renee Metcalf. Her parents are Paul and Karina Metcalf. Are they here tonight? We're glad to have you here tonight, too, sir. Thank you so much for all that you've done, what you've done, not only at your school, but what you've done in our community. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Louisville hereby recognizes and honors Renee Metcalf for her outstanding achievements as a Louisville Independent School District student and senior drum major in the following events and activities: All-Region Band 2 years, Lone Star Youth Orchestra 1 year, National Honor Society member, Circle of Friends member, top 10% of the LHS senior class, issued on this third day, January 2011. Congratulations. could get all three of you in here, we'll get a photo of all of us together, and each one of you hold your certificate.
Mayor, can their director come up?
Well, I didn't see him over there. Yes, sir, please.
This is Dr. Marty Courtney.
Dr. Courtney? Why don't you take a few moments and give us a little bit of thought about these fine young people?
Well, I just want to say these are three outstanding, wonderful students we have in the band program. Our band program consists of about 220 students. These three students are in our primary leadership positions. They are the leaders to the leaders, as well as the leaders to the entire band. They have set themselves apart in many, many ways and do so every day. They attended a prestigious drum major academy this summer, University of North Texas, the George M. Parks Drum Major Academy, and did an outstanding job for us all fall as drum majors, and will continue to be leaders for us throughout the year. So, wonderful students.
Right.
Proud of them.
If you'll get down there on the other end, we'll get some pictures. And I want to tell you something else about these wonderful people, and not just them, but if you notice, you heard they were the drum majors. But I got to tell you something, for the last number of years since I've been involved here, anytime we asked LHS to be in our parade, they did it. And I tell you what, on Saturday mornings, a lot of times, as a young high school student, you'd a lot rather do something besides get up and go march in the parade. But I can tell you what, they're our pride and joy of this city. It's our Louisville High School, and we love them to death, and we will thank you and all the people who participated. Let's get a quick photo. Point this little bit here. Everybody's laughing there. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for coming. There's nothing better in a parade, other than maybe Santa Claus, than a band. Those kids and everybody, young and old, kids young and old, love a band, so it's really neat. We appreciate them. Item number one is a Item number one is a public hearing consideration of an ordinance for a zone change request from local commercial to Old Town Mixed Use 2, located at 571 West Main Street, further identified as Morgan Addition, Lot 1, Block A, as requested by 571 West Main Ltd., the property owner. The proposed zoning classification, Old Town Mixed Use 2, is in keeping with the recommendations of the Old Town Master Plan. The applicant would like to rezone rezone for better flexibility in use and setbacks on the property. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted 7-0 in favor of the zone change request at their December 21st, 2010 meeting. Recommendation of staff is that council approve the requested ordinance amending the Louisville City Code Chapter 17 Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance as set forth in the caption above. Councilman Durham? I do not have any cards filled out to speak.
Okay. Move to close public hearing.
Second.
Have a motion to close the public hearing. Wait a minute, I beg your pardon. I did have one card here. I didn't see this. There is a card here filled out by Danny Golan. He is just here to answer any questions if we have. He's here just to answer questions. Is that correct, Mr. Golan? Okay. Okay, motion to close public hearing by Councilman Durham, a second by Councilman Watts. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Councilman Durham.
If no one has anything else, I move to approve.
Have a motion to approve by Councilman Durham.
Second.
A second by Councilman Thornhill.
This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Louisville, Texas, that amends the zoning ordinance of the City of Louisville, Texas, granting zoning changes on the 1.25-acre tract of land fully and completely described in the attached Exhibit A, ordering a change in the use of said property from local commercial district zoning to Old Town Mixed Use 2 district zoning, correcting the official zoning map, preserving all other portions of the zoning ordinance, providing a clause relating to severability, determining that the public interest and general welfare demand a zoning change and amendment therein made, providing a penalty, and declaring an emergency.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 2 is a public hearing consideration of an ordinance for a zone change request from office district specific use centralization water collection system for gas wells on 5.461 acres located south of Farm Market 3040 and west of Ace Lane, further identified as H. Turner Survey Abstract 1248A, Track 1A, and a requested variance by Williams Gulf Coast Production, LP, on behalf of the property owner. The proposed zoning would apply to 5.461 acres out of an 85-acre tract owned by Accelerated Christian Education Incorporated. The proposed use is for a centralized water collection system for various gas well sites in the general vicinity, some off-site, but all within Louisville city limits, and for a gas well pad with 4 well bores. Specific use zoning is required for the water collection use, but not for the gas wells themselves, which are governed by the oil gas exploration ordinance. Specific use zoning differs from most zoning classifications in that a full plan for the use proposed must be submitted at the time of zoning. Hence, the applicant has provided plans for the wells in addition to the plans for the collection system. The plan for the well pads, which include the water collection area, involve a variance from the gas ordinance to defer the landscaping requirement until after the pad site is reduced to approximately 3+ acres after well completion. The collection system itself will house up to 24 tanks, which will eliminate some, not all, tanks from the nearby Chin and Cobb gas well sites, thus reducing the ultimate size of those pads. The system also reduces long-term operational truck traffic to and from the Chin and Cobb sites by moving such activity to the ACE site via Edmund Lanes, Spinks Road, and Duncan Lane. Piping for drilling and fracturing water will be temporary above-ground polyethylene and aluminum in private easements. 2 crossings of city right-of-way by this piping will require city permits and related fees. Landscaping will be in place no later than 12 months from the date the permit is issued. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted 7-0 in favor of the zone change request at their December 21, 2010 meeting. Recommendation is that City Council approve the requested variance for defined landscaping and approve the proposed ordinance amending the Louisville City Code Chapter 17 Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance as set forth in the caption. Did we want us, Mr. City Manager, who did you want to have just give us a brief?
I think Tim Ippolito's prepared to give you an introduction, and then we've got Nika also on the zoning aspects.
Okay. Just give us a quick overview about the what it's going to, exactly what this is going to do, and about the above ground and the fresh water and the used water as you discussed. Please.
There it is. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to give you a brief overview of all 3 sites, because all 3 of these are related in relation to the SU proposal in front of you. The slide in front of you, again, shows the area at the that's affected. We've got our 3 sites there. We'll kind of briefly go through each one. At the end of this, I can also talk specifically about each site. So down at the bottom is the existing compressor facility at the Duncan pad. That's already there. Right adjacent to that is the ACE pad that's on a proposal for you right now. Moving towards the east in the green is the Cobb site. And then a little to the northwest is the Chen pad. So those are the 3 pads for Williams: Chen, Cobb, and ACE. Okay. This blue line is indicating this is for the underground piping that's going to be installed or proposed to be installed. That first one is the water pipeline. Okay. And that's taking the flowback water or the used water from the pipe, flowing it back underground through piping to the ACE pad, that centralized collection facility. There we go. The red line is the gas pipeline, or the gatherer line. That's the pipeline, again, underground. It's taking the gas that hopefully will be produced from the wells and taking it over to the ACE pad and then over to the Chesapeake compressor facility. And this third line, or the gold one, is it's called the gas lift pipeline. They're essentially taking gas from the ACE site and the compressor site, pumping it back to each of the 3 sites to use in their operations there. So those 3 are underground, and that kind of gives you an overview of the site there. Fresh water, again, will be through above-ground pipeline. If you recall back, just to below the Cobb pad in the blue is a pond that's been approved by the city and council. That'll be filled with city water, and that'll be used for their fracking operations at each of the sites, but that'll be piped to each one's through temporary above-ground piping. Once that's done, those pipes will go away.
And that's clean fresh water?
That's clean fresh water purchased from the city, stored in the pond, and then through above-ground piping, similar to agricultural piping, that'll be flowed above ground through recorded easements and permissions to each of the sites.
Okay.
And then once they're done with their operations, as far as the drilling and fracking, those will go away. And it's also tied into the Chesapeake pad, which you folks approved a few weeks ago too.
Okay. And then the used water is stored in tank. And when we're saying tank, we're not talking about a stock tank. We're talking.
Oh no.
Built tanks.
They're built to AST, whatever, some federal standard.
Right.
And no, they're seal tanks. All approved for that. They fall under our ordinance for height and all that. Now, initially, the water that comes out of the well will be shipped from each site. They can't put that water through the pipeline. So I don't remember. Williams could probably speak more specifically to it, but I think the first 60% of the water will be shipped from each individual site. But then, as I understand it, then they'll defer it and it'll go down the pipeline to the central collection facility, and then shipped from there by truck to an approved disposal facility. Okay. While I'm here, I'll just talk briefly about the other 2 pad sites because they're all related, if you'd like, Mayor.
Did anybody have any questions on that before he moves on? Okay. Go ahead. Thank you, sir.
Sure. Let's talk first about the ACE site. Here's a location of it. Again, it's down there off the end of Duncan Way. We're showing the blue lines here indicate the transportation route. It'll go up Duncan and turn, whoops, too many fingers here. Let's get back to that. Down Sphinx over to Edmonds and out to 121. Okay. This particular site, there are no protected uses within 800 feet of it, so there is no public hearing in regards to the gas ordinance itself. However, there are variances attached, or a variance request attached to the gas site itself, and they're the same for all 3 of the Williams sites. And that's in relation to landscaping. When they're constructing the site and doing their drilling and their fracking operations and getting it to where the well will be completed, they need a little more land than what's required when they're all finished. So they're starting off with about 5.5 acres of land. Okay? And again, that'll be through the production or until they're done with their operations. Once they get into production, they're going to reduce it to about 3.5 acres, and thus their variance request. They don't want to landscape the entire 5.5 acres, then have to when they shrink their pad site down, tear that landscaping out and re-landscape to the smaller pad site. So what they're asking on the variance is to wait until 30 days, maximum of 30 days after they're done with their drilling and fracking operations, and then install the landscaping. Our ordinance as it reads today requires landscaping within 30 days of start of construction of the pad site. Okay? The time frame should be no more than a year, or can't be more than a year. Our permits for oil and gas are good for 6 months or 180 days. At that point, if they're not completed, they can ask the oil and gas inspector for an extension for an additional 180 days, and that's all that's allowed in the ordinance. So it'd be essentially a maximum of 12 months. Okay? The ACE site, just for reference, they're only proposing 4 well bores at this time. That's reduced from their initial, I believe they had 6 or 8 initially proposed, and they backed off that to where rescinded some, and they're down to 4. Any questions on ACE?
So in essence, on the variance, what you're saying there is that the landscaping will be done the sooner of 30 days after the completion of the well, or 1 year,
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
whichever comes first.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Anyone have any other questions?
There's nothing within the 800 feet.
No protected uses within the 800 feet. Excuse me. Got a cold on vacation. Isn't that terrible? There are some structures there, the gas compressor facility, but doesn't fall under the definition of a protected use.
Okay. So why then, and you may have said this, but just for clarification. Okay. So the only reason why we're going to a public hearing, other than the landscaping is a separate issue, but the public hearing itself is those two structures.
Now, the public hearing is for the change of zoning to special use zoning, but there is a variance tied to the whole overall permit for the ACE.
Okay.
If there wasn't a need to designate this as SU zoning, all we would be doing is asking you for a variance to the oil and gas ordinance in regards to the landscaping.
Unlike the other site.
Unlike the other sites, correct.
And that's basically put in there to prevent someone from coming in and using the change of what we require be a change of ordinance would be to prevent someone from coming in and developing a site to use to bring in for storage for wells in other places.
Correct. This is worded, and it's only allowed to be for the three specific, or the central collection is only for the 3 Williams sites. They can't bring in, I'll call it used water for lack of a better term, from other sites and store it at the ACE site. It's just for the 3 Williams, the Chen, the Cobb, and the ACE facilities.
Mayor, I think we can have Nika address that in further detail later on.
Okay. Any other questions of Tim?
Not really for Tim, but just so that we don't have to keep having this variance request every time we have a pad site. Can we get the language fixed soon on an upcoming agenda so we can amend the ordinance? Because it seems to come up every time we have one of these.
Basically,
Does that give you enough time to do? Does the next meeting give you enough time?
Oh, I didn't say about the next meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
Just
thought you
sometime
said-
soon. Yeah, however much time you need. But
I think I was talking about that.
Just whenever staff can get it done. Okay.
Next, I'll talk about the Chen site real briefly again. Chen is located adjacent to the Crest Manor Apartments off of Ace Lane. There's your site plan there, or your location map, and it's also the transportation route that the trucks and stuff will be using. A very small segment of Ace. They'll go out onto 3040, and then they'll turn onto Edmonds and head down to 121. In this particular case, this does require a public hearing because there are protected uses located within 800 feet. It's within the 5 to 800 foot realm. There's 8 bores proposed for this site, and there's 5 protected uses within that 800 feet. There's 3 residences, 1 warehouse, and 1 apartment complex. I'm sorry, that's Cobb. I apologize. There's 4 wells with 2 protected units on Chen. There's a 1 residence down on the southeast corner or west corner that's on the Ace property. It's an old residence, and in the Crest Manor Apartments. Those are within the 5 to 800 foot realm, and that's why it's up for a public hearing on their permit. And again, similar to the other ones, there is a variance request to delay the landscaping up to 30 days after the pad site completion, or a maximum of 12 months. They're using a little over 3 acres to drill the site and get it into production, and then they'll reduce it down to about 1.5 acres, and that's when they want to do the landscaping around there. Okay. And that's Chen in a nutshell. And now let's try Cobb. Here's the Cobb pad. It's located off of Spinks Road. Okay. Their transportation route will be to go just from Spinks Road to Edmonds into 121. And again, on this one, a public hearing is required in order to issue them a permit. There are protected uses within the 5 to 800 foot realm of the well bore. It's important to note that this was submitted prior to the last revision when we changed the language from measuring these setback distances from the well bore to essentially the tank battery or any potentially harmful equipment. They did not fall under that provisions of that the latest rendition of the ordinance. So they're between 5 and 800 feet of the well bore to any protected uses. So Chen's proposed to have 8 wells with 5 protected uses within that 800 foot. There's 3 residences. I believe all those are of the Cobb family. There's the warehouse or the Majestic Warehouse to the south, and then also the Crest Manor apartment complex. So 5 protected uses there within the 800-foot realm. And again, like the other 2, they're going to reduce their pad site from 4.3 acres down to a little over 2 acres, and they're requesting the variance again on delay in the landscaping, similar to the others. Any other questions?
Any questions, Jim, on this?
The distance isn't a variance.
I'm sorry.
The distance that they're locating is not part of the variance. I just want to make it clear.
No, sir.
Just want to make it clear that there's just a public hearing because of it's in that distance.
Within the 5 to 800 foot requires a public hearing with a majority of council voting in approval of issuing the permit.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make it clear for the citizens to know.
Thank you.
Okay, Nika, could you come forward, please? Explain about the variance on the zoning, or the change of zoning.
Your computer again? Can I have your computer? I just want that first map, if you don't mind. Mayor and Council, this is probably going to be a lot of repetition from what Tim said, as Tim covered a lot of issues related to both the zoning case as well as the permitting part of it. But just to clarify and make sure everybody's on the same page, a typical gas well drilling site does not require a specific use zoning. Gas wells are permitted in any zoning district in the city as long as they meet the oil and gas permitting requirements. So the governing requirement and ordinance for the drilling site is within the oil and gas permitting. When Williams leased 3 sites, is that going to come on the screen?
Tim, there it goes.
There we go. So this basically shows you the overall situation or uniqueness of the situation that we have. They leased 3 pad sites, or they leased the area with 3 pad sites in the same vicinity. So this presented a very unique situation that we haven't had before. What they proposed to us is that instead of having tanks on every pad, which they need to have for collection purposes. So every site normally has about 8 to 10 tanks on each property, on each well site. Instead, they propose to have a collection system for all the sites on one property. This was a very unique use that requires specific use zoning. So it's the uniqueness of the use that requires the specific use zoning. Not only that, but also having a small compressor station. As Tim mentioned, the small compressor station is basically to push gas through the lines for their other sites to lift the water from the gas. So this is not the major compression station that Chesapeake has next door that basically compresses the gas into the major pipeline. So those are the 2 unique uses that you have on the site at Ace Pad, which also has a drilling site attached to it, and the reason for the specific use zoning. So what this does is, 1, the Ace Pad is very remote in relation to the other sites. It meets the 800-foot requirement, so generally it would not even require the public hearing because it's not close to any protected use. And having a centralized collection system does 2 things. 1, it eliminates having the need to have tanks on every pad site, or a lot of additional tanks on every pad site. It reduces the traffic that you're going to have to collect the water. These are the used water that would be collected and moved to outside of the city for disposal purposes. And then ultimately it reduces the size of the pad site for future surface development. So the larger the pad site, the more it's going to impact what we're going to have in this part of Louisville. So for that reason, staff went into discussion with Williams about having the centralized collection system, which requires the SU zoning. The SU zoning does give the council a lot of control on what happens. Basically, what you see is what you get. They cannot expand anything. Any additional use to what you are seeing tonight will require coming back to the zoning process. So the collection system, I just want to reiterate one more time, is only for the 3 pad sites for Williams. It is not for anybody else. If they want to use it for another site that may come in the area, they will have to come back and ask the council for that revision. So that is the beauty of SU zoning. That will give you a lot of control over the development of the site. I'd be happy to answer any more questions if you have any questions.
Anybody got any other questions, Nika?
So, Nika, let me make sure I understand what you said is correct. They don't need the SU to just keep the drill.
Correct.
But the SU is being requested because they want a compression facility on site?
They have 2 unique uses, the compression facility and the centralized collection water system.
Okay.
So it's mostly this collection system that requires it, but they also have added the small compression system to serve all 3 sites.
Okay, because all I saw on the application was just the compression facility. I didn't see anything on the application about centralized collections.
That's what the SU application was. Primarily, that's what it's for the centralized collection system, the water collection system, the tanks. 24 tanks on this property to collect the used water from all the other sites and dispose it to this site.
Okay, but that's not on the application.
It's the zoning application. The SU zoning is primarily for the centralized collection system.
All right.
And for clarification, when you're saying tanks, you're talking about
yeah, they're above ground tanks, storage tanks.
Storage tanks that are built to certain specifications out of material. And when you refer to ponds, you're talking like a pond that's just made out, dug into the ground, and a pond for holding fresh water.
Correct. This is tanks. This is storage tanks.
Storage tank, right?
Right.
It's not going to the ground.
Correct. I'm sure Tim has.
It's in the backup of the copy of the application.
Yes.
Councilman, which part are you referring to?
Actually, Section 2.
Oh, you're in the regular agenda?
Yeah, this guy right here.
Public hearing, the first one for the SU.
Yeah.
I can put it up.
It just says compression only. It didn't say centralized water.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think they're just, it is a centralized water collection system, basically. I don't know why they use the term compression facility, but that's essentially what we've been looking at from the beginning. And that's what's reflected in their large application documents.
So there's the application, basically. So they're showing the battery of 24 tanks, and then the small compressor station, and that is their SU zoning application.
And I do have a question as far as the protected uses with between the 500 and the 800 foot. Under the new rule, if I'm not mistaken, that would require a supermajority council vote to go through. Right now, we're operating under the old rule, which is a simple majority. Is that correct?
Not entirely. The old rule had a supermajority requirement for 300 to 500 feet. What changed was what we considered the measurement points. If you'll recall, what we had concerns with was whether you measured from only the wellhead or whether you should measure from the wellhead and any other equipment that might pose a risk of some kind. So we changed the ordinance to read from the equipment. And so now, instead of just measuring from the well bore,
you're measuring from the well bore or any other equipment that comes within, anything that comes within 300 to 500 feet would then require a supermajority to approve.
That's the new rule.
That's the new rule, but the supermajority requirement's always been there. It just it applies to more now than it used to apply to because of the measurement change.
So currently it's 300 to 500, any equipment.
Correct.
Last time it was the measuring between 500 to 800.
No, last time it was 3 to 5, but it was only from the well bore.
Correct.
Okay.
So my question is on the last one that we approved, the company voluntarily adhered to the new ordinance and have had no equipment within the 300 to 500 foot range, correct?
Correct.
Is this company doing the same thing?
In this particular case, number 2, there is no other protected use within the 300 to 500 feet range. There's nothing.
That's what I thought.
There is, on the Cobb application, we believe there's at least one house probably that is within that 300 to 500 range
of equipment
under the new rule. That house is owned by the Cobbs themselves.
But we're still playing by the old rules.
So we're playing by the old rules in all of these cases because of the timing of the submittals.
Any other questions, Anika? Or any other questions of Tim, either one?
Mayor, I was just going to point out that even measured from the well bore under the old rule, they would fall under the requirement of a supermajority. So even though we are...
No, they don't. If they had something within that 300 to 500 feet, they would, but there are no protected uses within 300 to 500 feet.
So the only difference would be in this one, we're operating under a simple majority now, which would still be the same for item number 3. Item number 4 would be, we would need a supermajority because of that structure, that house is within 300 to 500 feet.
If you were operating under the new rules.
Right. So that's the only difference between the old rules and the new rules right now.
Right.
And that one house happens to be the Cobb's house.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, don't go anywhere, Nick, but we might need you. I think we're okay right now. I know you're not going anywhere. Okay, next person is Bobby Dolak from G&A Consultants. Do you have a presentation?
You're voting on in this case, you're voting on the zoning.
If you would, Bobby, state your name and address for the record, please.
Including a variance.
Yes, Mayor, my name is Bobby Dolak, 111 Hillside Drive, Louisville, Texas, G&A Consultants. Here on behalf of Williams,
Here.
Gulf Coast Production. First of all, I've got 3 presentations prepared, one for each site. Tim and Nika both did a great job. We've been working a long time with staff and with the Williams Group. I'm coming up with this proposal for you tonight. I'm going to kind of skip through a lot of these. We work close. You've seen this slide. This is actually the grading plan that's graded. That's the big pad, the 5.5 acre pad that they need to drill. They need to build it in order to get all their equipment. And so you see all their equipment, all their job trailers, all of their rig and everything. That's how big the pad site needs to be in order for them to do their work safely. And on the ACE pad site, if you've had an opportunity to drive down there, I mean, you have to be wanting to go there to find it. I mean, it's down in the hole close to Denton Creek, and you really can't see it. You can't see it from Spinks. You've got all the mesquite trees and everything. You can't. It's down in there. So there is no. All these pad sites meet the sound ordinance. Your sound ordinance for every single one of these pad sites. The ACE pad site, they're not going to put up what you see, those big sound curtains, like we explained with the Prologis site, because of the proximity to the houses and stuff. The ACE pad site doesn't necessarily need any sound walls or anything. You can't hear. You meet the sound ordinance anywhere around here. We're way beyond 800 feet from anything. So, but that's how big. And just to show you here, that's their. And then this represents how the pad's being shrunk down. So once they build the site, they drill their 4 wells, they frack their 4 wells, and they're ready to move off the site. They'll shrink the pad site down back to 3.1 acres, and that's part of their lease agreement with ACE to minimize the size of the final footprint of the pad. And at that time, they're proposing to add all the landscaping. I think Tim and Nika explained that quite well. One clarification on the compressor. You're hearing compression. I'll just make it clear that it's gas lift compression. It's not compression to compress the gas to take it to market. That's being done next door at the Chesapeake site. Williams has an agreement with Chesapeake to compress the gas and take it to market. That Atmos tap has already been made. That compression facility already exists. Williams didn't see the need in having a compression station right next to a compression station. The gas lift itself is kind of like the centralized tank batteries. To have gas lift down here on one station and pop the gas back up down the well hole to help bring the water back up, it helps make the wells function. And the only other choice they would have is to put gas compression on every pad site, therefore making the Chin pad site a little bit bigger and the Cobb pad site a little bit bigger, and you'd have a compressor station on each pad site. So the beauty of the centralized facility is that you only need one compression. And again, the location of where this ACE pad site is next to the Chesapeake compression site seemed to be the ideal location to have the gas lift, thereby minimizing both the Chin and the Cobb pad sites because they are closer up to the developed area. So that's just a clarification of the ACE pad site. Now, if we are discussing the Cobb and the Chin, I got just a couple little ones. If that's what you want to do, I know it's just agenda item number 2. I'll wait for the next.
Why don't we hold off on that on your side of it? I know staff did that because it's kind of intertwined.
Yeah, I'd be happy to hold off and talk about those specifics.
Let's just do item 2 here.
Okay. With that, I mean, I have the whole Williams team here. If anybody has any questions that relates to the centralized facility, I think I got somebody from every department because I'm not smart enough to answer all the questions. So if you have any specific questions, I got somebody here smarter than me.
Anybody have any questions at this time? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I do have 2 speaker cards filled out. Have a R. Neil Ferguson. Who is here in opposition. Mr. Ferguson, if you'll just state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, R. Neil Ferguson, 1097 Holly Lane, Louisville, Texas. I've been a resident at that address for over 20 years. I mark opposition. Let me actually start by saying the concept of this lift station, combined lift station, and centralized water collection facility, I think is a good idea. So that may seem to run counter to marking the card in opposition. My concern is with 2 parts of the plan, and I'm going to speak on one of them, which is the safety aspects, and then the other concern I have is with the emissions. I'm going to venture off a second and tell you that I had to go to a funeral today in Archer City. Didn't have time. I usually come up here with, pretty much prepared. Didn't have time to prepare. And so if I'm a little less organized than usual, I apologize. Also wanted to address one concern by Councilman Watts that because of improvements that are being made to the ordinance, we're still seeing requests for variances. In this particular instance, this is not a pad site. So the ordinances that we've been working on with regard to drilling sites don't apply to this circumstance. That's why the need for a variance here. My concern, I said, is with the safety plan and with the emissions plan. With the safety plan in particular, what we had hoped to see any site develop as a safety plan was a fairly detailed, call it a checklist, call it a flow chart, call it whatever you want, but an action plan that identified the what-ifs and then identified the what-to-dos. Who to contact, what moves to make in what order, what efforts had to be done, what concerns there were. Did it involve the fire department? Does it involve a hazmat team? What are the action plans based on the potential for any kind of safety issue at any given site? In this instance, if you've looked at what's submitted, the safety plan, to me, looks like what the average lawyer comes up with to avoid saying anything. It says they'll do whatever is practical, and as I said to somebody else, if they were building you a swimming pool and said, I'll build you whatever's practical, would you sign on the dotted line? I know I wouldn't. I would want to see something very specific. I want to know what I'm getting and I'm not getting. And with an issue like safety that's way too important to the citizens of Louisville, I think that we deserve that kind of plan. I think that the time to identify what actions to take are now. It's not when a problem occurs that you sit down and go, well, who do we contact and what are the implications of this unexpected event? It's now before it happens. So I'm not going to ramble on. I'm going to leave it at that. But look at the safety plan and ask yourself, does this really say anything? Or does it essentially say, if something goes wrong, it'll be real hard to sue us? Because that's what I see. Otherwise, fix that, fix the emissions plan, the concept of the centralized facility. It's a good idea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. We also have a card. Steve Southwell.
Steve Southwell, 995 Downey Drive, Louisville. Like Neil, I had to mark something on the card, so I marked opposition. But it's not that simple. And I did sign up to speak to items 2, 3, and 4. I think we're kind of talking about all these together because they're all related. So I'll say my piece now, and if you have questions on 3 and 4, I'm glad to do whatever I can. Now, I'm not opposed in principle to these wells. As far as the location, they're kind of down there in the middle of nowhere. It's not, distances to residential are not objectionable to me. I think it's the closest distances are to the property owners that leased, so that doesn't really bother me that much. I like the idea of a centralized facility. I think it's a great idea to kind of move all that stuff in one place. And I think one of the major good things about a centralized facility is that it's one centralized place where you can get the economies of scale that you need for the kinds of emission controls that you might need. Rather than having to maintain 3 sets of that, you can maintain it in one place. Some of you probably got a copy of an email I sent earlier today, or maybe one that I sent last week. I have some problems with the emission plan that was submitted. And before I get into it, I just want to tell you what my recollection was of our stakeholder meetings when we talked about this. What I wanted to do right off the bat was say, what's the strictest regulation any state, any city, anywhere has? Let's have that, because nowhere should be safer than Louisville, Texas. But what they said, and what the lawyers said, was we can't be stricter than TCEQ. So we can't tell them you're only entitled to this many tons per year of pollution. That's what TCEQ does. They call their polluters customers, and they say you can have 25 tons per year Just think about how much pollution that is. So we can't be stricter than TCEQ that way. So maybe we could say some practices that we want them to use, that maybe if they use these practices or set up their equipment in such a way, maybe that would kind of reduce the propensity to pollute. Well, they told us, no, you can't tell us how to do that because we know our job better than you do, and technology changes, and all drillers are different. We all want to do our different thing. And I respect that. I really do. And really, to be honest, I don't want to be involved in that. I don't want to have to tell them, here's what you do. So really what the answer was, and what we came up with, and what you guys passed, was to have them tell us, how are you going to reduce emissions? How are you going to be clean in Louisville? You tell us specifically how. So then whatever they tell us in that plan then becomes a condition of their permit. And the purpose behind that is that if we catch them doing something different, and that's usually going to happen when you get a citizen complaint and there's something going on, that's when you hammer them down and you say, you told us you were going to do this, you're not doing it, shut it down until you fix it. Without that in place, TCEQ is not going to do it. All you have to do is look at Flower Mound and look at all the citizen complaints they've had. It's a big old mess that we don't want to get into. We don't want to have citizens worrying about cancer clusters and worrying about whether their asthma is brought on by it or this or that. We just want to say, we're the safest we can be. There's almost no emissions. It can't possibly be from that. So now, as I understand it, towards the end of, in the last meeting we had, they did bring forth a sample emissions plan. I guess Chesapeake and Williams and maybe Titan got together and did an example. Now, when they brought that, I don't recall us discussing and saying, oh yeah, this is good, this is perfect, we agree on this. I think what we agreed to was we need a plan. And I know that in those meetings we talked about not only the plan, but the assumptions behind the plan. Because what they were telling us in the meetings was, oh, this is Louisville. Your gas is so clean, it has no sulfur, it has no condensate in it. It's so clean, we're going to put it straight in the pipeline. There's no need for any emissions controls. So, okay, fine. I trust you, but you need to put those assumptions in writing, because if the assumptions change, we need to know. So I take full responsibility. I didn't catch Titan in that when they came to you with the Prologis application. Very similar plan. I just didn't catch it. I didn't look at it. I mean, they're not required to do that under the old rules, which they got vested under.
Okay, your 5 minutes are up on this one. So if you want to continue that, you could, because you are signed up for 3 and 4 also. So.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, I have a card here from Tom Hayden, but I'm not sure what item you want to speak on. Sure. Is this the item you were wanting to speak on?
The centralized collection facility.
Okay.
Mayor Euchre and members of the council, my name is Tom Hayden. I reside at 4213 Huntwick Lane in Flower Mound. I'm also a member of Town Council in Flower Mound, Texas. Before I start, I just got to tell you what a beautiful building this is. I was wondering, can we maybe borrow your plans? We need to upgrade our facilities. I was driving home this evening, and the mayor of Flower Mound called me and said, would you please come visit with the Louisville Town Council on this subject, because we've been dealing with this ourselves. So I'm really not prepared to speak. I don't really know the specifics. But one, I'd just like to talk in generalities. Which, by the way, you give people 5 minutes here. You guys are awfully brave. We only have 3 minutes in Flower Mound. But as I understand this is for a centralized collection facility that's near Dixon Lane. Is that reasonably accurate in the proximity and the location? Is it near Dixon?
No.
No.
Duncan.
Duncan.
I'm sorry? Duncan Lane. One of the things that, and again, the mayor called me at 6:30 this evening as I'm driving home, and her comment was, this is very close to the Flower Mound town, to the border. It's also very near a school where the LISD is talking about relocating a lot of students from Flower Mound. And again, we haven't really had an opportunity to consider how this might impact Flower Mound, but since it is close to our borders and also it's very near where many students have the potential to be in redistrict, if you see fit, we would certainly like an opportunity just to be able to study what you're doing and maybe express an opinion. As you know, in Flower Mound, it's been a very debated topic, and we've been very there's just been lots of resident interaction and concern about this. The other thing is, as you think about a centralized collection facility, I had the opportunity to vote on a centralized collection facility in Flower Mound about a year ago, and I'd just like to visit with you the things that are going through my head. You know, one of the things that was presented, and Williams was going to do a centralized collection facility. It was either 7 pad sites, and then it became 12, and then it was reduced to 9. It was varying, but it was in the Cross Timbers area of Flower Mound, and it was a spider web of pipelines going throughout this area. And one of the things that was presented, and it does have merit, is the reduction of truck traffic, because you are taking this to one centralized area. But as I started thinking about this in greater detail, if you're taking this truck traffic to an injection well, you're really not limiting the volume of produced water that's being transported. The route, instead of being 50 miles, may be reduced to 49 miles, for 49 miles. So you're just kind of making it in this one area. But the overwhelming concern that we had was the health, safety, and welfare. And what really I had difficulty with is the pipeline is an unregulated pipeline. It's a pipeline that's transporting materials that repeatedly we asked would like to know what's in these materials. In fact, I was reading an article today about Pennsylvania where they were dumping produced water into some of their streams, and reporters referred to the toxic materials that were in the produced water. We really struggled with this unknown substance being traversed underneath Flower Mound's property. It would have been a much easier decision for us if we would have had the ability, if the industry would have been transparent and they hadn't been clandestine with what is in this material, to give us the opportunity to know what is being shipped. And that was a real sticking point, not only for myself, but I mean thousands of residents in Flower Mound, that we're being asked to just trust the industry. You know, as Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. I wanted the opportunity to verify what was in the materials. Repeatedly I asked Williams, you know, this would be an easier decision. Just give me an opportunity to know what it is that you want to transport beneath our surface. Repeatedly I was turned down. So, you know, it's possible you'll look back 10, 20 years and you say, you know, there were no problems. However, if there is this uh-oh moment, if there is a leak, if there is a spill, you know, it was just difficult because it was unknown. And so for us, and we did take a vote on it, and it did fail in Flower Mound. And I think one of the driving forces was just the fact that the industry would not disclose what it was that they wanted to transmit beneath our borders. But I would just ask if there is an opportunity, since it is so close to Flower Mound, and again, I don't know how we got behind the 8 ball, but we just found out, I found out about this an hour ago. It'd be great if we could study what you're doing, and maybe at your next meeting we could provide some input or just give an opinion.
I don't know how you're behind the 8 ball, because Mr. Filipiano has been talking to me about it for about 2 years.
I don't know either. All I know is that the mayor of Flower Mound called me at 6:30 tonight as I'm driving home from work and said, hey, Tom, can you go over to Town Hall? So I don't know how the information didn't get disseminated, but I found out about it at 6:30 tonight. So Thank you very much for letting me address you.
Okay, that's all the cards I have for item 2. Yes.
I'm sorry, I filled out a card. I think I put 3, but what I'm really speaking to is this particular public hearing. May I speak to it now?
Certainly may.
Do you have my card?
You certainly may. What's your name, I'm sorry?
Julie Malcolm.
Yes, ma'am. Come forward. I understand. I'm glad you spoke up and said you had the wrong number on there.
Wouldn't want my comments to be out of place.
If you would have been on the next one, it wouldn't have.
My name is Julie Malcolm. I live at 985 Cashin. In 98% of the maps that you've seen tonight, I could have showed you exactly where my house was in relation to all of these variances. So this issue is very important to me. My daughter goes to Parkway Elementary. It's one of the two schools to which Councilman Hayden referred to. I think the other school he's talking about is the new high school that's being built up there. Since that topic has been brought up, I would request, or I would tell you that what I'm asking you to do tonight is to table this particular agenda item. And I would recommend that the principals of those schools, that would be Principal Judy Myers at Parkway, and I believe Andy Plunkett is going to be the principal of the new campus, and I see no reason that they would be left out of these discussions. So I would ask that you take that into consideration. Now, my reasons for asking you to table these motions, actually it's a reiteration of some of the speakers that you've already heard. I think that the plans that have been submitted to you are very inadequate. The emissions plan, my understanding, is about 1.5 pages long. I find that very insulting, considering my family's health, the health of all of the students, and my property value is enormously impacted by this, by the emissions of all of these sites. 1.5 pages is not nearly adequate. So based on that, I think that we can rightfully demand more from the industry for what they want to take from our community. Louisville is a community, and that's what we're dealing with. All of the presentations that you all are hearing tonight are very technical. You have the industry leaders coming in. You see them giving presentations. But I want to bring back to you that human element that is often left out of those things, that you can look at charts and graphs, and you can look at maps, and you can look at all of those things. And while those things are very important, what you aren't seeing are the faces of the residents. And it's very important that you remember that, especially with the two areas that they're asking for some variances. The housing that's there, in particular the apartments and the mobile home community, the people who live there are not the property owners. They very likely don't know what's going on. They were never requested to sign a lease. That is not something that they have control over. So I don't think that they really understand what's going on, and they most certainly deserve to. So the second reason for tabling this, I think, is for public information. When gas drilling approached and started to come on to the city of Louisville, there was a lot of, not necessarily information, but there was a lot of marketing and PR from the gas companies saying, we want you to trust us, we want you to buy into this. And so I applaud you as a council for really taking some steps to pass some very good ordinances. However, since then, there hasn't been an adequate amount of information. And I try to keep a pretty good pulse on what's happening in our community, and a lot of these things have fallen off of my radar. So I know that many other residents, in particular those who are not property owners, have not paid attention to it as well. And I think that it behooves the city of Louisville, the sense of community, to have more public information. I would think that the gas companies would want to do that as well, because they would want to gain the good faith of the residents. And certainly as council members and the leaders of our community, I think that there might be an opportunity there for you all to maybe partner and cooperate for some public education. So really, I just want to remind you to keep the human element when you start thinking about all of these things, especially on behalf of all of the citizens that you're going to see here. And I would also like to thank the previous speakers, because their comments were fantastic. And you all should know that Tom Hayden, although he's probably appreciative of his citizens for all of the information, he's probably very envious of you all and your more low-key town council meeting. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. As I said, that's all the cards I had. I did have one come in also. A speaker did not want to speak, but he is in support of this, is Steve Hill of Cando Drive, or I believe that is.
In support of what, Mayor, specifically?
In support of item number 2. You did or did not? Okay, you turned in a blue card that says do not want to speak. Okay. Sure. Could you give your name and address for the record?
Yes, sir. Steve Hill, 964 Camden Drive, Louisville, Texas. I wanted to speak in favor of these variances. I wanted to remind everyone here that what these variances are actually about are zoning and landscaping and not emissions and health. I just want to keep that in the forefront of our minds as we talk about this, to say we're following, not we, I'm not invested in this anyway. I live in the neighborhood near where these wells are going in. My children also attend Parkway Elementary. I live very close to these sites. But the issue that we're talking about here is a pretty simple one. It's not a matter of, at least in my opinion, of going outside of the ordinances. We're talking about changing the zoning, and we're talking about landscaping. So I don't really have too much to say. I'm in favor of these sites, and I just want to bring that back to the forefront of this is the issue at hand, and it needs to be considered on its merits. Thank you.
Councilman Grena, no more cards.
Since there's no more cards, and if none of the other councilmen have any comments at this point, I move to close the public hearing.
Have a motion to close the public hearing by Councilman Grena.
Second.
Second by Councilman Watts. All in favor?
Are we in public hearing number 1?
No, 2. Did I say 1?
It's number 2.
Okay.
Yeah. Did I say 1?
No, you're probably right.
No, we're in public hearing 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Scared me there. All right, have a motion to close public hearing number 2 and by Councilman Grena, and a second to close public hearing by Councilman Watts. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Councilman Grena.
I'm sure that other councilmen want to make comments on this, and I hear a lot of the concerns out there. The last speaker was actually spot on that this is about landscaping, and the majority of it is, except for this item number 2 is, about changing this zoning for the collection wells. As far as the people deciding, the gas companies received a whole lot of leases, more than they needed to even start this process. I think the people spoke by saying we want to be a part of the drilling, whatever it's there, $250, $500, whatever they got, if that's all their motivation was. But the people voted on it in that respect, which gave the gas companies the permission to come seek the permits, basically, to get all this stuff started. There's a lot of detail in that, but basically a lot of people filled out the paperwork to do the leases. I hear your concerns, and I'm all concerned about safety and stuff. However, I think that our ordinances have gone through, in the last 2 years, have gone through 2 core groups. A lot of the same people in the first and second group are still not wanting the drilling now. I think that the city staff has done a great job in these ordinances, and they're still being refined. Even tonight in the council, we've been in a workshop meeting, and even before, we've been talking about increasing distances and doing what we need to, which is what has happened recently. I want to be in favor of these variances for the landscaping. I just don't see a reason why they have to tear it up and kill all those plants again to make it smaller. So I'm in for it. Anybody else have any comments?
Yeah, I'm going to let everybody speak.
Okay.
Councilman Watts.
Like it's been said, this is about specific use zoning and landscaping. Hopefully we'll get the landscaping part fixed so we don't have this specific ordinance or variance each time we do one of these. The specific use zoning is just so that they can do the centralized facility, which makes sense. So I have no problem with this, and I'll be in favor.
Councilman Thornhill.
The concept was mentioned earlier that it seemed to be a good concept. So conceptually, I can understand the bringing it all in one location. When I asked earlier, the SU, if it's denied, the Williams, I believe, can still drill. Is that correct? The SU doesn't stop them from drilling.
The SU doesn't stop them from drilling.
Right. So what you're doing is you're taking 3 pads and bringing it all together in one central facility. But if we deny the SU, they could still drill.
Correct. They could go back to you're asking me the question, they could go back to having tanks on each side
Right.
and move on with the permitting.
Right. Okay. And I could see where trucks are coming out of one location rather than three would probably be beneficial. It doesn't reduce the amount of the stuff coming out of the three. It just centralizes the exit of the material. Normally when a zone change request comes before us, it's by the owner. Is the owner here tonight? I didn't think so. In that case, if the owner didn't sign the application, is there a letter of authorization here?
Yes,
Where?
in the application, they have.
Okay.
Mika, I don't think your mic's working. I don't know what's wrong. We need to either use yours or Bob's or something.
I don't have a copy of a letter of authorization.
Come up to the speaker because I can't hear you. I'm sorry, it's just something, it's not working, so we can't hear you.
Yes, sir, we do have a letter of authorization on file.
Okay. And then I guess looking at the application itself, everything's been touched on about 5 acres. But the application for SU is showing 85 acres, which causes me to have concerns. There was 5 acres on the application, but then somebody came in and crossed out the 5 acres and put 85 acres for SU. Can you explain that one?
I can't
Because it makes a
explain
big
that.
difference
It's-
about voting on 5 acres versus 85 acres.
Correct. The specific use zoning is only for the 5.4 acres out of the 85 acres total property. So Accelerated Christian Education owns 85 acres. The SU zoning is only on that 5.4 acres, not the entire 85.
The problem is what he's bringing forward is the application you've got is incorrect. You're asking for SU on 85 acres.
But that's not what's on the agenda. I
What's on the application?
would characterize that as a Scribner's error of some kind that's been clarified throughout the permitting process.
I have the original application with me right now, if the council would like to look at it.
That's what they're looking at.
And it's crossed out and said 85 acres instead of 5 point something.
We have those problems from time to time when people who are filling out the form aren't necessarily familiar with what's being asked for.
I guess I don't want to vote tonight on 85 acres.
You're not voting on 85 acres. The agenda clearly says 5 point.
Because here's my fear. If it's 85 acres, are we going to build another 85 acres of central collection out there at some point down the road? That's where I'm scared.
It is definitely not for 85 acres. Actually, the application I don't have on file. The only thing I could say is that if they initially filed an application that showed 85 acres, we'd later on ask them to resubmit a new application. My application shows 5 acres, which is an original application.
What I have before me tonight, before the council.
I'm awfully sorry. It must have been.
I don't.
Yeah.
And all the backup material clearly contemplates only the 5 acres. Everything in the permit application, this large book behind you, contemplates only the 5 acres. So there's zero doubt about that.
And whoever makes the motion can just say, for the 5.461 acres, and then that's what gets approved, not 85 acres.
Normally, when we zone change requests, we put out signs. Did we put out any signs on this guy?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The reason why we didn't charge them for that?
Yes, sir, we did.
We did charge them?
Yes.
It's not on the application.
I'll ask a question. Have we looked at every application that's ever been done in the city that says that they paid for the signs? Every application.
I guess where I'm going with it.
I've never heard that. I've been here 16 years.
Calm down.
This application I'm concerned about.
17 years, excuse me.
I don't think you can look, Councilman, at just the one sheet of paper. The application is that sheet of paper plus an entire booklet of information and any other documents that might not even be in the packet tonight.
I'm not interested in what's happened in the last 16 years.
I'm not either.
17 years, excuse me.
17 years. I'm worried more about this one tonight.
But it's never come up before. Never once.
But really, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't ask the question.
Yeah, because it was mentioned that
does in this case.
this is sitting down in a site where very few people can see what's going on down there.
So where do we put the sign at?
So I guess my concern is, are the people in Louisville being made aware of what's going on?
So where do you put the sign at?
The standard regulations that are required by the city.
Right. Is there any indication that that was not done?
I couldn't find any signs out there.
Okay.
The sign was up, we verified it by our department, and actually we received phone calls very early on because the sign was up off of Duncan.
Okay, that's it for right now.
Councilman Tierney?
Thank you, Mayor. One thing that bothers me is, and I don't think there's any way around it, is just the positioning of each of these items. We can approve this, and the next two items could be disapproved or denied, and we still have a central water collection system that we just approved with a specific use on it that will never have that specific use. But again, there's probably no good order. I guess this order makes the most sense. I do have some issues on the next couple items that I'm sure we're going to be diving into here in a couple minutes. As far as, and I'm a little disturbed by the fact that this is a public hearing, and for a zoning change request, which we are to determine in a zoning change request the highest and best use of property. It also carries a variance. The variance is for landscaping. Okay? So the zone change request that we're looking at is for the highest and best use of the property. This is not just about landscaping. We need to determine, first and foremost, if the use of this property is the highest and best use, and if this specific use zoning that we're being asked to change it to is indeed the highest and best use. Is it higher and better use of this particular property than office district? It's not just about landscaping. I'm perfectly okay with a landscaping variance. To me, that's, of course, it's important, and that's why we're looking at it. But that is a secondary issue that I'm looking at right now. I think that the way that we're proposing to use this property in the overall picture of things is a very logical way to do it, and I think it's overall, for the operation, if this drilling were to take place, it makes the most sense. We can control the property, as it's been stated. In the future, we have specific control over what's happening over there. We don't lose that control. If we were to deny this and they were to go in a different direction and go ahead and drill anyway, which they have the right to do, we lose a whole lot of control. So I like the fact that it is a specific use. We do have that control, and there's a number of other, benefits that go along with it, as far as the lower traffic and number of other items that are listed in the agenda packet. So, having said that, Mayor, the only issue that I have is really the positioning of it. I don't think there's any way around that. So even if we were to approve it, the other ones for some reason didn't go through, I guess that's going to be the issue of the property owner, and I'm sure they know what risk they're running. So I will be in favor of this specific use permit.
Councilman Durham.
If it wasn't indicated correctly, I am in support of this. But, and I will make a motion to that, to specify that it be the acreage listed on the, in our backup information, plus the variance to approve it.
Would you state that again for me, please, sir? I'm sorry.
Okay. I move to approve with the acreage that is listed on the request here, the 5-point-some-odd acres.
5.461.
Whatever it is.
Okay.
I don't want to get into any more or less, but, and to approve the variance.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Durham to approve the zoning with the variance for the 5.461 acres, which is listed in the caption and in the administrative comments.
And counsel, this might be redundant, but the ordinance that's in the backup specifies 5.461 acres. The description, the legal description of the property involved involves 5.461 acres, and the zoning board itself looked at 5.461 acres. So there's a clear trail that links to just that size tract as far as the zoning is concerned.
Okay. Good. Had a motion and by Councilman Durham and a second by Councilman Guerrero. Any further discussion?
Mayor.
Councilor.
This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Louisville, Texas, that amends the zoning ordinance of the City of Louisville, Texas, granting zoning changes on the 5.461-acre tract of land, fully and completely described in the attached Exhibit A, ordering a change in the use of said property from office district zoning to specific use centralized water collection for gas wells district zoning, correcting the official zoning map, preserving all other portions of the zoning ordinance, providing a clause relating to severability, determining that the public interest and general welfare demand a zoning change and amendment therein made, providing a penalty, and declaring an emergency.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-1. Item number 3 is a public hearing, consideration of issuing 4 oil and gas permits and consideration of a variance to the Louisville City Code, Section 7-607, the oil and gas ordinance regarding landscaping for the site located at 2445-A Ace Lane, known as the Chin Pad, as requested by Williams Gulf Coast Production, LP. The applicant has requested a permit to drill 4 natural gas wells at the captioned location. The oil and gas ordinance requires a public hearing and city council approval, as well as the well bores are located within 500 to 800 feet from a protected use. Additionally, the applicant is asking for a variance to defer the installation of a portion of the required landscaping until 30 days after completion of the final production pad site. Landscaping will be in place no later than 12 months from the date of the permit is issued. All other requirements and provision of the oil and gas ordinance have been complied with. Recommendation of staff is council approve the issuance of the oil and gas well drilling permits and approve the requested variance as set forth in the caption above. We've heard from staff on this issue from Tim earlier. Did council need Tim to go over this again? Or do you have any questions of him on this before we go?
You have, I'm assuming you have speaker cards for this?
Yes, sir.
So we can certainly come back and have questions.
I just didn't know if you wanted him to do another presentation on this particular item again. He'd kind of gone over it in his other presentation. And then I'll also ask Robert Dolak if he wants to give his presentation on this item, because I did ask him to keep his to the first item. Wait a minute, I said Robert. It says Bobby on this one. The next one says Robert. I'm sorry.
Answer to both. My mom's usually the only one that calls me Robert. I'm usually in trouble. Bobby Dolak, 111 Hillside Drive, Louisville, Texas, with G&A Consultants. All right, Chin Pad. Okay, as shown on the screen before you is the location of what we're referring to as the Chin Pad. You've seen this slide before. This kind of shows the whole picture. Here's the setbacks, the 500, the 800-foot setbacks. The pad site, the ultimate finished pad site, again, because of the centralized collection facility, is able to be reduced down to 1.59 acres. Now, to start off, just like on the ACE pad site, the pad site needs to be a little bit larger in order to accommodate all of the equipment. That's the grading plan on your page before you for the ultimate pad site. That's what will be gravelled. The reason it needs to be that large is because that's the area required for safety for the operations of drilling these wells. And there are 4 wells permitted on this pad site. Now, thing that I wanted to show you on this pad site, because of the proximity, you got two temporary entrances off of Ace Lane to circulate the trucks in and out of the site. And then we're putting a sound wall. You got a picture on your right there. There's a sound blanket wall. It's not required by your sound ordinance. They meet the sound requirements per your ordinance. But because of the proximity of the 500 to 800 feet, Williams is proposing to put up a sound barrier curtain around the site, as you've seen around town, 2 blankets high. And that's during the drilling and fracking operations. Now, after they finish drilling the 4 wells and fracking them, they'll reduce that 3.17 acre pad back down to 1.5 in accordance with their lease with Mr. Chin, and plant the landscaping at that time. There's approximately 33 trees. They'll take away one of their temporary entrances and put in their permanent entrance, because this particular pad site will only have the tanks that are in this bottom right-hand corner and the separators. Those are only emergency tanks. The water is all piped off-site, as explained in the SUP process. So those are just emergency backup tanks. If they were to have to shut the water line downstream, they would use those tanks on a temporary basis to store the water. So really the only vehicles that would be coming to this particular pad site once it's complete is just a pumper, a truck that would come and check the equipment on a daily basis. They come, read the gauges, check, make sure everything's okay. So that's all you would see at this pad site. So again, the setbacks before you showing the clear distances between the wellheads and the surrounding protected uses as shown on your screen. 551, that's a small rent house on the Ace property. And then 682 and 681 to the existing apartments. Now, we still would meet the setback off of the tanks. The location of the temporary tanks, which would be far less than required. Typically, there's usually 2 tanks per well required for a standard pad site, and here they're drilling 4 wells. They need 8 tanks, and they only need 2 tanks. But the tanks would meet that variance also on this one. So, as you kind of discussed earlier, the only one that really doesn't meet today's ordinance is Mr. Cobb's house on Mr. Cobb's pad that would be between that 300 and 500 feet. So, we do meet your current ordinance also on this particular pad site. And then I have all the backup plans that are in your packet. I know that you all read all 400 and something pages of each booklet that we put together, but I do have all of those in case you want to discuss any of some of the plans that are in your packets specifically. Having said that, again, I have I have someone from every department with Williams here to answer any questions that might come up. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
Bobby, is there anybody living in that house, did you say?
You know, I don't know if there is or not. They checked the meter when my surveyor shot in the house. They didn't see the meter spinning, so either they didn't have any lights on or nothing was plugged in. But I don't know. I don't know what capacity they use that house as. But that's the setback to it. It's field verified 551 or 552.1 to the corner of the house.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, have several cards filled out here. First one will be from Robert Payne. Oh, you didn't want to speak, just available. Okay. Have Robert Payne here is available to answer questions. If you had any. He is with Hawkeye Realty West, Louisville, LP. Next card is Jim Judge. If you would just state your name and address for the record, please, sir.
It's, excuse me, Jim Judge, 14241 North Dallas Parkway, Suite 1050, Dallas, Texas. I represent Alliance Residential, and we have the property directly west of this site across Ace Lane as a phase 2 of a multifamily residential project option track. We have our first phase is directly west of that across Valley Parkway. And we're under having our plans submitted to the city. They've been approved. Both sites are currently zone MF2, and the site right across from where they're planning these well sites, right directly across Ace Lane. And so that is obviously of some concern to us. We realize that it's not a current project, but one that we wanted to bring to your attention. That's something that we have the property under contract for an option of a phase 2. Approximately 180 to 190 units would be directly across the street, right across Ace Lane in the future. And that brings some concern to us from a financing and use status. So I appreciate your time and we wanted the council to be aware of this, as it may impact future development in the area. Thank you.
Just a second, can staff tell me, does that property you referenced to, does it fall within the 500 or 800?
I think it probably falls within the 800. I'd have to, if somebody could bring that map back up.
Just trying to pinpoint where your location is a little bit more in reference to the site.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is it right in here, sir?
That's it. I mean, it's this 9 acres that sits right across the street.
So it directly abuts.
Right.
So it's under the 500 foot, correct? You're saying it's right?
And again,
Under
this
300 foot.
This would be a future phase 2. Again, our phase 1 is directly across the street.
Directly across.
From that at Valley.
You can see Ace Lane is that vertical line where the access road is going into the pad site.
Right.
So their property is directly on the west side of that line, yeah.
So that would fall probably within 300 feet.
But it's not a protected use because it's vacant property.
Right.
That is correct.
And the zoning on it is multifamily 1?
Correct. It's multifamily 2, I believe.
MF2.
Okay. All right. Thanks, sir. I just want to make sure we knew where it was.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
He's also on the other side of Valley Parkway, I think he mentioned as
Right.
well.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we did notify you and let you know that was coming up. Okay. Thomas T.J. Gilmore.
Right, I left my computer at home. My apologies. T.J. Gilmore, 724 Juniper Lane, Louisville, Texas. Just go through a couple of dates here for you. March 17th, 3,300 gallon spill in Flower Mound. July 29th, Argyle tank overflow. August 20th, 190 barrels of flowback fluid spilled. September 20th, 40 barrels of drilling mud spilled. October 20th, TCEQ fugitive emission event, Flower Mound. November 9th, TCEQ fugitive emissions event, Flower Mound. December 31st, TCEQ fugitive emissions event, Flower Mound. April 11th, Dallas Morning News reports that over 90% of gas processing plants, wells, compressor stations had fugitive emissions in this state. I don't tell you this because I'm against drilling. I tell you this because the documentation we got is ineffective. It does not address emissions and safety to a level that we can go back and put a hook in it. Bottom line, yes, accidents do happen. In fact, they happen on an average of every 6 weeks in Flower Mound, next door. Let's not have that. Let's have a hook. We need that. The documentation, as I read it, 1.5 pages, just not enough to let us know what happens, to tell me that you're committed to green completions. It's not enough. What are you doing? What's specific? Green completions, Oscar the Grouch is green. Does that mean we're putting it in a trash can? What's it mean, especially when you put it in quotes? Define the term for me, please. Yeah, I'm a stickler for dotting the I's and crossing the T's, because if something goes wrong, where do we go? We go back to the document, that big monster binder that I've read, you've read, we've all read. If something goes wrong, that's where everybody goes back to, and we need it in the paperwork. Simple. That's all I'm asking. Take 2 weeks, get a little bit better emissions plan. We've got some outlines that, while I don't agree with everything that you might have read, I agree with some parts. I'm sure we can have a happy medium. I've had great conversations with Williams. I've been part of the shareholders' meetings. All I'm asking is for how you're going to do it, not we're going to do it the way we think is best. I want to know how, so I have a hook. It's just legal. It just makes sense. Please, just give us a couple of weeks for clarity on these documents. That's all I'm asking. I'm not asking for you to stop it. Just want to make sure that we have the best safety and the best emissions plans possible for Louisville residents. And that way Williams is protected too.
Thank you, sir. Steve Southwell.
Thank you, sir. Steve Southwell, still at 995 Downey Drive. Sorry I couldn't talk faster and get it all done last time, but I just want to make it clear once again, because this always gets turned around, I am not in opposition to this. What I'm asking you to do is table it for a couple of weeks, make Williams come back and do just what he said, dot the I's and cross the T's. You're about to lose an opportunity that you can't get back. Once you approve this, that's it. You can't put any more conditions on it. Now, look, I acknowledge that neither Williams or Titan had to do this because they were under the old ordinance. Remember how they snuck in here and got them all in at the last minute when that moratorium failed? Okay, I realize that. But they did put it in. It does suck. You've probably seen it, and I'm surprised you're not offended by it. A page and a half of a brochure rather than an actual plan. Now, when you fail to actually plan, you're planning to fail. And you can tell that's very apparent by the legal language they used in it. Almost everything they've said in their plan has an out. It's full of weasel words. I'd also like to note that I think you got a letter from Williams this afternoon in which they pointed out the precedent that you let Titan do it, and their plan was similar, so you have to let us do it. Well, Titan, that ship has sailed, but here you are. You can see the pattern that's forming. If you let them do this on these, 16 wells, if you let them do this, that's what it's going to be like for the rest of the city, even for the ones where it is required. Now, I just want to remind you that this is a public hearing, and you guys have the right to reject this for any reason or no reason. We're not just here talking about landscaping. Our ordinance, the old ordinance, required a public hearing and a majority vote. You can reject them just because you don't like them. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm asking you to table it. Let's talk about it in a couple of weeks. Now, because of the sheer number of wells down there, and there could be more than what they're showing you in the binders, at least according to the Railroad Commission permits, there's a lot more wells. And because, my neighborhood, a pretty big neighborhood, is right downwind from that for the majority of the year, you could end up with some serious problems. All I'm saying is let's get them to give you something more than a PR document. Make them give you an actual plan with actual details. This is not like where you go to get a building permit and you submit a brochure. No, you submit a plan. They want blueprints. Let's make them do the same thing. All we're asking is for them to tell us, what are you specifically going to do? And not in marketing language, because you'll notice the difference between what they've said in here, in this room, when you've asked them what you can hold them to, and what they want you to put in this plan, what they want to have a condition of their permit. I want to know why. Make them put it in writing. Make them stick to it. That's all I'm saying. I do give them credit. They say they want to do a green completion, but if you'll notice, that was in the narrative portion. That was not in the emissions plan, and that's a major thing that should be in an emissions plan. Are they going to be flaring and venting these wells? Or are they going to complete into a pipeline? Very important stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. R. Neil Ferguson.
R. Neil Ferguson, 1097 Holly Lane, Louisville, Texas. Actually, I started to waive my right to speak on this after turning in a card, and I'm pretty much going to keep it very short. I tried to explain earlier that this was not, especially on the centralized water collection facility, this was not a drilling issue. And on these variances, it's not a stop drilling issue. That's not the point here. I don't know how that got confused, but it has nothing to do with stopping the drilling. It has everything to do with setting measures in place to make sure that citizen safety is placed first and foremost. There's a desire to see ordinance changes that will tighten up regulations. It's a two-way street. This council can do the same thing on its own actions. They can tighten up ordinances. They can tighten up regulations. They can see that when they get a plan for safety and for emissions, that it means something. And if they don't get one, tell that party to go back to the drawing board and come back again, do it right, do a good job, we'll happily approve it. But you have that responsibility too. It's not just on the citizen panel to come up with an ordinance so that you can say, well, if that's what I have to do, I'll approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. One question I had of staff before we go further is the gentleman, Mr. Jim Judge, that was with the site going to be directly across the center. Did I understand him say that he has actually submitted or had talks with the city on the development?
He has.
And what has he submitted, I guess?
Well, Eric, I'll have to answer that specifically. I know they got some variance requests later on in the agenda.
Well, in part, tonight you have a preliminary plat on the bigger piece. That's a preliminary plat of several lots. We were willing to work with them, so we let them submit a final plat and an engineering site plan on part of their multifamily development. I don't believe they submitted a plan as of yet on the tract adjacent to the well site, but they are going that direction.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Councilman Watts.
I assume there's no other cards.
That's it.
I move to close the public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a motion by Councilman Watts to close the public hearing.
Second.
A second by Councilman Thornhill. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Councilman Watts.
A lot has been said about the emission control plan and requiring something very specific. As I recall, as we talked about this ordinance update, that one of the things that, I mean, I guess there's an upside and a downside to every way that you try to do something, and one of the upsides of having a very specific requirement as far as emission control is you know exactly what the driller is required to do. The flip side of that is that technology changes from the time you pass this ordinance, and something goes wrong, then they're only required to do what you put specifically in that ordinance. I don't know the best way to handle emission controls. I think that the way that the ordinance is set up now, it's up to us when somebody files a permit, to make a case-by-case basis decision on that specific application. If we got very specific about requiring everybody to do the exact same thing, you run the risk of like I said, later on something happens and then they're only required to do that very specific thing that you listed in the ordinance when there may be something better that they could have done, which leaving, I guess, may make some uncomfortable more general language implies that they will do. Use the best technology, et cetera, that's available at the time. So that's why I'm all right with this as it's on the books, as it's this application. And I'm sure other people want to make comments, but I will be moving to approve.
Okay. Before we move on, I did have a card here that was given to me by Kyle Scott, who did not wish to speak, but is on Briarcliff Road in Louisville, does not wish to speak, but is in support with concern that emissions control plan does not contain specific targets and commitments. So support with an asterisk that with the concern that our emissions control plan does not contain specific targets and commitments. Hope I got that right, sir. Okay, thank you. Apologize for missing that. Okay, Councilman Thornhill.
Well, the only thing that's really got me concerned here, I guess, is one of the apartments sitting over there, the apartment buildings, and we did have the public hearing because of that and some other issues here. I would really like to see this go back and try to work up a feasible plan with Williams before I approve.
Councilman Tierney?
Yes, Mayor. I have a question for staff. What is the standard protocol for notifying people, residents, in a public hearing setting? Staff.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. I was speaking down the line.
Set your alarm clock.
I was talking to John.
What is the standard protocol for notifying residents, property owners, in what distance, what area when we do a public hearing?
I'm going to actually let Eric and Tim address that. There's actually, within the application, they identify who they've notified and the means by which they notified them.
Councilman, when there's a public hearing required, excuse me, the applicant is required to notify each landowner within that 800-foot radius by U.S. mail.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you, Tim.
Oh, getting closer. I apologize. The applicant is required to notify all property owners within that 800-foot radius when there is a public hearing required. They do that through the U.S. mail. They also have to post in the newspaper, in our legal newspaper of the public hearing, and then they put a sign out. They have to put a sign out there at the site. So everybody within that owns property within that radius is notified through the U.S. mail.
So that's from the 800-foot center.
From the bore, in this particular case, it's measured from the center of the bore in that 800-foot radius,
So
and the applicant did do that.
Yeah, one of my concerns is that at our last meeting, we were one of the property owners for something similar having to do with gas drilling, and we never got proper notification as the city goes. That's a concern. Now, that's property owners. I'm sure there's quite a few obviously there's an apartment complex in there, the renters. Any notification go to the renters?
The gas ordinance as it's written states that it has to go to the property owners, not to tenants or people that are renting maybe an industrial building or anything of that. It's to the property owners.
Okay. Thanks.
Exhibit D in their large packet shows the property owners that were notified.
Okay, and that's a return, mail, receipt, some sort?
Yeah, it doesn't indicate that, but I assume that they received those notifications.
Okay. Okay, specifically looking at, actually, you know what, I think that my notes might be on the next one. No, this is the right one. Specifically looking at the plan, the apartment complex in question, it looks like we have a pipeline. I don't know if you have that picture or if it's shown on here. Pipeline running real close to those buildings. It's a major. It's not one of the water pipelines. It's actually carrying natural gas, as I understand it. Appears to be, I don't know, about 20, 25 feet running next to the apartment buildings.
We looked at that after some discussion this afternoon. It's a little bit further than that from the actual width of the easement itself, which is granted by the property owner, is 25 feet, and that may be where the 25 feet came from. But I think the distance of that pipeline from the buildings is actually more than that. 60 feet? Okay.
60 feet pipeline from the apartments?
From the apartments, yeah.
Okay.
From the nearest apartments.
And you said it was 25 foot is the actual law, and that's going through a private easement?
It's a private easement. That's regulated, as we understand it, by the Railroad Commission as to those types of collection lines and where they can be and what size they need to be. But
That's
again,
completely
that easement,
governed.
that is a private easement.
And that's completely governed by the Railroad Commission.
We don't have anything in our ordinance that regulates pipeline easements.
Could we supersede the Railroad Commission?
I think we'd have to have legal take a look at that. I don't think you can supersede them. Whether you can go beyond what their minimum requirements are would be something that legal would have to take a look at.
Okay. I have some concerns, obviously, listening to the public comments that are coming in and reviewing the emissions control program that has been submitted. There's a number of items on there that do appear to be very vague, that do appear to be, offer some outs if needed, if convenient for the driller. Not saying that our driller would ever do that, of course. One conversation that I do remember during a meeting a number of months ago was one of the drillers in particular, not quite sure who it was very proud of the methods that they use. They were very proud that they went over and above the regulations that are currently required, and they went into some specifics. And I don't recall what those were, but there were some very specific technology that they used, which was better than what we require, which is better than what the state required. And I remember making the comment at that time that I think that's great that they're, such a responsible citizen, but I also made the point that they are doing it, so it is possible to do it. And having said that, I think it's reasonable to make that into standard practice and use that in our ordinance. They're already doing it. It's possible. They agreed that it's making the environment safer. I wanted to incorporate that into the new ordinance. And what I don't see in this emissions control plan right now is any of those specifics. I do agree that it's very vague. There are some emissions. It was brought up. We received a letter from Williams today making the comparison that we did approve the Titan application at the last meeting and that their program was identical or very similar to Williams. But in reviewing that, there is some information that some of it's verbatim. Some of it is specific, word for word. But there are certain pieces, and we went over this in workshop, that are mysteriously deleted. And my concern is, as it's been brought up by a lot of people in the public right now, I think we can tighten up and get some more specifics on the emissions control program. Having said that, I am, as I've said in the past, I am for drilling. I'm for drilling in the city of Louisville. If you own your mineral rights on your property, I think you should have the right and the ability to reap the benefits from them. But I'm very for responsible drilling. So I think that this can be worked out, and I would be in favor of tabling this for a couple of weeks. Hopefully that would accomplish getting some more specifics on this emissions control program. I think by doing that also, it would allow a little bit more notification to the public and some of the people that may be living in that area that may not have been notified because of our notification policy. So I will be in favor of tabling this item till the next meeting.
Councilman Durham?
I've got a question for the Fire Marshal. Sorry about bringing it up one more time. So maybe we can get through this one real quick.
Stay out there.
On the emission control plan,
Yes, sir.
what was submitted is on what was submitted. Do they meet the requirements for the city of Louisville? On what was submitted on the emission control plan?
Well, in a very strict sense, they met the requirement of submitting a plan, which they really didn't have to by ordinance on this one, but they went ahead and did it.
Okay.
And we reviewed that and felt it was, at the time, that it was met the intent of what we were trying to accomplish.
Okay, thank you. I'll be in support of this.
Councilman Grant?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of questions. Mr. King, just wanted to clarify, if this vote fails, can they still drill?
They can still drill by amending their application and complying fully with the ordinance. In other words, they would not have a variance for the landscaping.
Right, they would have to, yeah, okay. Just want to make sure that's clear. And I agree with the topics that Councilman Tierney was talking about. If we need to improve or make it more strict, then maybe we need to look at it again. Mr. King, when is the next meeting of the Staff Citizens Gas Drilling Company?
I don't think we have one scheduled right now.
Okay. Well, I know that in the workshop I asked about adding this 30-day thing, changing it in the ordinance. Right. Councilman Watts also mentioned it. I'd definitely like to look at seeing what we need to do to not shut them down, but maybe require a more specific plan on the emissions and have items that they must address in the plan a little more specifically. They can be vague in those two, I understand, about like Councilman Watts mentioned, about the latest technology. But if they're going to go above and beyond the state and what we require, like Councilman Tierney said, they're doing it now, we can make that our minimum requirement. So I think that was a good point. So we need to look at that on the next one.
One thing before you go any further, I need to ask the city manager to clear that up. I'm not sure he expressed that correctly. I believe even if they're not asking for a variance here, even if they're not asking for a variance, because this is a public hearing, they still must have a majority vote for this to pass. If it did not pass by majority vote, they would not be able to drill.
Yeah, there'd still be a public hearing because of the 500 to 800 foot requirement. It just would not have the variance attached to it.
Right. And if it did not pass by a majority vote, they would not be able to drill.
That's why I was saying that they would file an amended application or a new application to...
But I want to make sure you understood, because I'm not sure you...
Right, but they would be able to drill after but they would have to do the drilling, and then they'd have to do the landscaping because they're meeting the ordinance. Is that correct?
Right.
But if they came back with an amended application, and it was still in the 300 to 500 foot, and we denied it, they would not be able to drill.
Period.
5 to 8. 5 to 800.
Right, 5 to 800. Right.
I'm sorry, what was that last statement?
5 to 800 feet, which is what they're in right now.
Yeah.
The first one, the item 2, was not in the 5 to 800 foot.
Correct.
Everything was 800 foot out. The second one, this one, and the next one do have structures within the 5 to 800 foot. So therefore, they must receive, correct me if I'm wrong here, but what my job is, I think, to make sure we get this right.
I want to make sure
is
I get
that
it right, too.
if they do not receive, because it's in the 5 to 800 foot, if they do not receive a majority vote, they are not allowed to drill for approval. Majority voted for approval.
Because it is not within our ordinance without a...
Because let me try to rephrase this. The public hearing requires council to vote on a permit application for a application that has protected uses within 5 to 800 feet. You are basically either approving up or disapproving down that application. And so what the mayor's saying, and he's correct, is that even if they don't have the landscaping variance, it still comes to council for a vote on whether or not to grant that permit. If you vote no, no permit, no application, or no drilling activity. If you vote yes, which is kind of where I was assuming, then it would be allowed.
And from the drawing, from the chart we just saw, we saw that there was a house just barely over 500 feet, and then there were some apartments. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That's up there.
Within the 500 to 800 feet.
That's still up there right now.
Right, up there.
Now you're talking about a simple majority.
Simple majority.
Right. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just want to make
No, sir, I'm glad you clarified it. Thank you. It's because I was going that direction anyway, and you just helped me get there faster. I appreciate it. I do have a problem with the houses within 800 feet because our ordinance talks about that we need to have an approval for that. If there was a gazillion houses all in that 500 to 800 feet versus 4 apartment buildings and a house or 2, to me there's no difference. There's still protected structures in there. And on this case here, man, I'm still up in the air. I was all for it until just about right now. So I will think about it and vote when we all vote.
Okay. I'd also like to say, Councilman Tierney brought up the issue about at a prior council meeting. That was some while back, but and I could be wrong, but and my wife will testify to that I'm wrong a lot more than she is. But I'm pretty sure that it was Williams, in fact, that got up and spoke that day. The gentleman's back here about all the wonderful technologies they used and above and beyond. What I find curious is that they are unwilling to put that in writing, that's their plan and that's what they want to do, and that's what they will do. And instead, their actual plan that they submitted actually does less than what the Titan plan that was proposed, according to the city manager, says that it is actually doing less than what the Titan plan proposed, which was passed before. I'm pretty frustrated with that. If you say you're doing all this stuff, why aren't you willing to commit and put it in writing? This is what we are going to do. This is the plan. I haven't seen that. It's a little late to do it tonight. I haven't seen it, but I would certainly like to see you commit to that as you stood up and spoke. And I see you nodding your head and say, yeah, it was me that got up and spoke from Williams. I would like to see you put that. This is what we plan on doing. This is what we're doing. What that does is 2 things, in my opinion. One, it reassures our citizens that the efforts that you are doing and the actions that you are taking are to their utmost protection, that you're doing what you think is the best in technology offered right now today. We know it every day it changes, but as it offers right now, you're doing what is best out there to protect them. The second thing it does, I think, is demonstrates to our citizens and to us, well, we're citizens too, but to our citizens that you are willing to stand behind what you say you're going to do by putting it in writing. And to me, that's a lot more credible. Because we've had, in the years I've been on council, almost as much as Rudy, is that we've had seen a lot of people come and say they're going to do a lot of things in this city, and when we don't get it down in writing, those things tend to drift off, and they're gone, and boom, we're stuck. So I'd prefer to see it also a little bit. And I'm not saying I'm not giving you a criteria. I guess I'm just asking you to state exactly what you're willing to do. You did it in public before, verbally, but I'd like to see it committed.
Mayor, can I make a motion to table public hearing number 3, please?
To
continue it?
You going to withdraw? To continue? It'd be to continue.
We haven't closed yet?
To continue?
We haven't, yes, we did close the public hearing.
Okay, so you're just continuing.
We continue to continue the public hearing. Okay. Correct, Counselor? It'd be to continue the public hearing.
Well, if you close the public hearing, it'd be to table the decision.
Okay, so
that's what I'd like to do.
Table the decision.
Move to do that.
To a specific date.
And to a specific date, she says.
Next meeting is January 24th.
January 24th.
Which is the next scheduled council meeting, because the 17th is a holiday.
I'll second that.
We have a motion to table this item to the decision on this item to the next meeting, which is January 24th by Councilman Tierney, and a second by Councilman Thornhill.
May I ask, they're tabling it for what reason? Be specific.
Well, similar to what the mayor said, I would like to see more specifics on this plan. I don't have anything written down as far as what I want to see. Maybe what I'd like to see is go back at that last council meeting and see some of the specifics that they were talking about that they can do. But one of the things the mayor said is in good faith. I would like to see a more specific plan. I don't know if it's possible to send this back to our committee, if that's feasible.
Oh, I'm sure it's feasible.
What was the date, the next meeting date? Somebody had asked that.
24. No, I think he's talking about the meeting of the group that met.
There wasn't one planned.
We don't have one.
We don't have one scheduled, but I'm sure they could get one scheduled.
Can we get one
in 3
scheduled
weeks.
before the 24th?
Prior to the 24th, or did you say for the 24th?
Before the 24th.
Yeah, we could, I'm sure, pending everyone's availability. We could certainly try to.
Mayor, I did have a question before we move forward. Sure. Councilman Green asked about the properties within the 500 to 800 feet. Huh?
That owner owns one, doesn't he?
Yeah. The apartments, they have permission from them, I believe. Is that correct?
Correct.
So that's not an issue there. What about the other house?
That's the one that can't figure out if anybody lives there.
That's owned by ACE itself.
So it's ACE is a member of this deal too?
Right.
Of this group?
Right.
So there wouldn't be any ownership within that would be non-approval of this?
There are some property owners that are in the 500 to 800 feet that are not part of the...
Not property owners, structures or whatever.
Uses? Okay.
That's all I'm talking, not property owners.
Okay.
Because the one that had the option on the property was brought up earlier.
The answer is yes.
Okay. So those have all been accounted for as the structures. Thank you, Mayor.
Did you get your question answered, Councilor Grena, from Councilman Tierney?
No, I don't have any more questions.
I said, did you get your question answered by Councilman Tierney on why he was moving to table it?
Yes, I did. I'm just trying to figure out why. But
And again, my objective is to come to a reasonable agreement so we can proceed with the drilling.
I understand, but I just thought with the ordinance and that they're under now, you know, that they're meeting all the qualifications that they're supposed to do for the permit when they supplied it under revision 1 or 2 or whatever of the ordinance we had.
That's right. And the prior driller voluntarily met the new ordinance.
Yeah, and that was voluntary.
Every letter of law.
But
and gave a little bit more detailed plan on the emissions.
I'd like to see a full detailed plan how they're going to respond to it too, but it's you know, it's how it's when it was the permit was submitted and what minimums that they're required, and
yeah, but I understand.
It seems like we're changing the rules on them, and that's where I'm having a problem right now.
But this part of the objectives, I believe, for having this public meeting is one of our decision points here doesn't have to be, well, we're going to deny it because they didn't give us our proper information. As I understand it, and somebody said tonight, we're still looking out for the best interests of the citizens. We don't need any reason to deny this. We can deny it because we don't like the color of their trucks. We don't have to say any reason why. I mean, we certainly wouldn't do that, but there's no specific reasons, and that's what I understand as far as the public.
I was just trying to be, you know, fair because they're following all the rules, and you know, God knows those huge 4 or 5 inch binders they gave us was, you know, tough enough to develop than to read through.
I just don't see where a 3-week delay to try to get a little more input from them, from the drillers, as to what they're going to do on emission control, how that's going to hurt the drillers. At the same time, I think it would make the citizens that are in that surrounding area feel a lot more comfortable that we at least try to get a little more information before we made a decision on it. That's my thought.
Can I just clarify, Mayor?
Sorry.
Right here.
So I was looking at that, I forgot.
In order to deny it, we would need a reason.
I'm sorry, I was told
He wanted
earlier
to deny
today
it,
that
tabling. Oh, you're talking
No,
about what he was just
I was
saying.
told we could deny it without
I think
having
you can
reason.
deny it, but
Based
push
on-
come to shove, you cannot be arbitrary and capricious about it. You just can't deny it. Just
I had a
because.
conversation earlier today with a senior administrator, and I wasn't specific.
Well, I assume that arbitrary and capriciousness was not part of the equation.
Anyway, we can discuss that at a later date, but we're not talking about denying
We're certainly
tonight.
not going to do that anyway.
We're not talking about denying tonight. He was talking about...
Yeah, but my point, Councilman Garina, was that, this just gives us an opportunity, understanding your point of view.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
This is the motion to table, correct?
Motion to table to the January 24th meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
We have, motion fails, 3-2. Can I get a, did you get the record, Secretary?
David and Greg, yes.
David and Greg, yes. The other 3, no. Okay.
Move to approve item 3.
Close public hearing.
It's already been.
Sorry.
We have a motion to approve item 3 as presented. Second. With the requested variance also?
Yes, with the
requested variance as set forth by Councilman Watts, a second by Councilman Durham. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 3-2 with the 2 here, Kearney and Thornhill. Okay. Thank you very much, and thank all of you very much for coming. Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
I do encourage Williams to submit a plan. I just couldn't see you following the rules, but if you would step forward and do a plan, I'm sure we all would appreciate it. Thank you.
The plan for what?
Excuse me?
Emission.
The emissions plan, and if they would on their own come out and looking out there, they're all shaking their heads, they're going to make an effort. So we'll work with you. Appreciate it if you work with us and come up with a good plan. Raise the bar. We want to use you as an example. Thank you.
Item 4 is public hearing, consideration of issuing 8 oil and gas permits and consideration of a variance to the Louisville City Code, Section 7-607F, the oil and gas ordinance regarding landscaping for a site located at 8750A Spinks Road, known as the Cobb Pad, as requested by Williams Gulf Coast Petroleum Production LP. The applicant has requested a permit to drill 8 natural gas wells at the captioned location. The oil and gas ordinance requires a public hearing and city council approval, as well as the bores are located within 500 to 800 feet from a protected use. Additionally, the applicant is asking for a variance to defer the installation of a portion of the required landscaping until 30 days after the completion of the final production pad site. Landscaping will be in place no later than 12 months from the date the permit is issued. All other requirements and provisions of the oil and gas ordinance have been complied with. Recommendation of staff is that council approve the issuance of the oil and gas well drilling permits above and requested variance as set forth in the caption above. Okay, let me get back to my cards here again. T.J. Gilmore. Oh, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. First, I'm sorry. Got a little carried away here. Hold on, Mr. Gilmore. Did staff want to hear anything from Tim McGill on this? Remember, he's losing his voice. I'm sure Eric can fill in if he has to. Anybody need to hear anything from Tim McGill on this? Okay. Mr. Robert Dolak this time will come forward. What's that?
Good evening again, Bobby Dolak, 111 Hillside Drive, Louisville, Texas, with G&A Consultants. All right, this one up on your screen is the Cobb gas pad site on Mr. Cobb's property. As shown in green, the blue is the pond that you saw at the last council meeting that's going to be for the frack water, the water they're going to buy from the city. You've seen this slide again before. It's the overall picture. Now, the Cobb pad site is a 2.03 acre pad site, the final pad site, but it starts off as a 4.3 acre pad site. Again, they have to build the pad large enough to support the drilling operation. Again, similar to the Chin Pad site, a little bit different. They're going to enclose this whole pad site and not leave one side open. It's just due to the proximity of the surrounding areas. They're going to enclose the whole pad site with the only opening being the access road in and out. You can see the fire lane to meet Tim's requirements and all the equipment. And again, the picture's on the left this time of the sound enclosure. Again, this is above and beyond your ordinance. It's not required by your sound, but it is Williams stepping out in the community to screen and provide that extra layer of protection. Once they get done with the drilling of the wells, they'll reduce the pad site down to 2.07 acres. Again, they are able to get it down smaller because they're piping the water and the gas to the other side, and they don't have compression on this site. So this is the actual, and then shown here in green is the landscape plan around the pad site itself, showing 47 trees and I don't know how many bushes. There's 100 bushes or so. Shows the equipment. There's 4 temporary tanks, 8 separators, and then 8 wells. This slide illustrates the setback to all the structures, 700 from the apartments, 783 to the warehouse, 783 to one of Mr. Cobb's houses, and then the 809, the house in discussion that we were talking about earlier. So they all do meet the current ordinance as far as the setbacks. They all land within that 500 to 800 feet. As far as the notification that was brought up earlier, I personally mailed all the letters to everyone myself, watched the postmaster stamp them. We got them off of Denton CAD records. I think they're in tab R or N or one of those, tabs in your 4-inch binders. So I gave you notification of everybody I mailed them to. That was within that 500 to 800 feet. And it is just property owners, not renters or anything like that, just property owners within that 500 to 800 feet. Again, all your supporting data, where the wells go, it's all in your packets. If you have any questions, I can go through any of those slides too, but I'm just going over the general slides up front. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I do have my safety and emission guys back there that keeps nodding his head. If y'all have any specific questions of him, he'd be happy to come to the podium. He hasn't been called. With that, I'll yield to the mayor and the council.
Have any questions? Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
T.J. Gilmore, please.
T.J. Gilmore, 724 Juniper Lane, Louisville, Texas. A couple of quick things. I'm disappointed, but that's okay. That's why we're here. I do appreciate Councilman Garina making that request, and I hope Williams follows through on it. I look forward to seeing that documentation in the shareholders' meetings, which, of course, I've been attending. I have a couple of other small details that y'all may want to take a look at, and apparently they may not have been looked at. I don't know if you noticed, but in your packet, page 29, there's 0 Louisville contact information on their emergency preparedness plan. The only number is Medical Center of Louisville. No police, no fire, no nothing. No evacuation plans. In fact, they talk about compressor programs, and they talk about evacuations of their Fort Worth office, but they do not discuss any of the specific sites here in Louisville. Now, I don't believe that's as strong an argument as the emissions, but it's definitely another challenge that I had with the document. And I didn't want to slam you with everything, but now I'm going to hit you with the others. Last one, and I'd love Williams to talk about it. There was an emission on January 31st. I don't know the details. What I've heard is that some sort of, on the drill itself, some sort of flange or valve or something actually got eaten away by sand coming back up through the frac water. Well, according to their inspection plan, yes, they have somebody on site every day. But they didn't have anybody on site, or apparently they didn't have anybody on site over in Flower Mound. I'd love for them to speak to that because it took quite a while for them to shut that facility down. And in our packets, it says that the inspections are to be done once a year, no longer than 15 months between inspections. I would think if there's a failure of that magnitude at a drilling location right next door that's not any older than 9 months old, that 1 year to 15 months is not an acceptable inspection plan. It needs to be shorter. I'd ask for the council to request some of those changes. not because I'm against drilling, because I believe that the safety and security of Louisville residents comes first, profits come second.
Thanks. Tony Cobb? Oh, you're just here to answer any questions? Okay, sir. All right. Thank you, sir. Steve Southwell.
Still Steve Southwell, still at 995 Downey Drive. Still would like you guys to table this. Seriously, you're about to lose your last opportunity to make them do what you've already said you want them to do. Voluntarily is not going to cut it when it comes down to them having a violation. I just want you to think about 6 months, 9 months, a year from now, when these wells are operating, there's a leak. Somebody can hear it or smell it. Somebody's reporting headaches. They're calling the city, they're calling TCEQ, and they're coming down and doing a whole lot of diddly squat. You're going to have mad people in here blaming you for what's going on. You have the chance right now to put things in writing, to make them put things in writing, and they say they're going to do it. Make them put it in writing, and let's have the staff look at it. Make sure it looks okay. Make sure it's the best they can do. That's all I got to say. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. R. Neil Ferguson.
R. Neil Ferguson, 1097 Holly Lane, Louisville, Texas. You know, I refuse to give up on this, but I have to ask myself, what is it I have to tell you so that you get it? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And once again, I have Kyle Scott here, who is concerned that the emissions control plan does not contain specific targets and commitments. He's with Louisville Neighbors for Responsible Urban Drilling. Councilman Tierney, that's all the cards I have.
Move to close the public hearing.
Have a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
By Councilman Tierney, a second by Councilman Watts. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Councilman Tierney?
Yes, Mayor. I, again, reiterating that I'm pro-drilling, and I just have a hard time seeing what would hurt to hold it off for 2 weeks. I make a motion to table this item.
Have a motion by Councilman Tierney to table this item
to the next meeting.
To the
January
next meeting,
24th.
January 24th.
Have a second.
Have a second by Councilman Thornhill. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Was that 3 nays? Oh, just want to make sure. Motion fails 3-2. Get that, City Secretary? Okay. Councilman Durham?
Councilman Tierney through with his comments about this?
Yeah, we had a motion and second, and then the vote took place.
I mean, if you had about the topic that we're now going to discuss.
Oh, I don't know. It depends on what else is brought up.
Okay, I won't say any more then. I'll be supporting it.
Okay. Councilman Grana?
Actually, I would like to hear from Williams on that emission, if he would, if that okay with you, Mayor?
Certainly.
All right. And while he's coming up here, hey, you know, when you're doing that plan, can you address response, monitoring, and a little bit of procedure in there? I know you don't have to go into detail because I know you have probably manuals on how to respond to something, but just kind of touch on it so that we can help people understand a little bit more what you guys do. Thank you. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. My name's Lucas Smith. I am the EH&S rep for Williams Production. I do live here locally. My address is 3507 Chris Court, Weatherford, Texas. A few of the questions that have been brought up, one of them is about the recent release at our Bob Smith Pad A site that happened on January 31st. Actually, on that location, that was not a reportable TCQ event. Let me make that very clear. We released approximately 75 MCF of gas. That is equivalent to what an average home uses in 1 year. VOC content of that, which is your volatile organic compounds, which is regulated by the Texas environmental quality, is 5,000 pounds during a release. We released 3 pounds of VOCs, basically the equivalent of a can of paint thinner or a gas can up to like a gallon or 2 gallons sitting on the ground and evaporating during that event for VOCs. So it really wasn't that much. Now, a better plan, yes, there is. We're actually testing something right now at one of our sites on how to prevent those kind of washouts, because an emissions control plan is not going to find that kind of a leak, because that's happening from the inside. How are we going to find that from the outside with a piece of equipment? It's not going to happen. We do have a device that we're testing at one of our locations right now. It's called a sand probe. And what a sand probe is, it's a softer piece of metal than what those valves are made of. That probe is inserted in front of that valve that generally will wash out, which is what happened. It erodes quicker, so whenever it finally dissolves, based on the sand hitting it, it's going to send a signal and can potentially close that well in, or let that technician that's responsible for that site know that there's a problem on that location with sand, and that he needs to take that valve off and inspect it, ensure that it's safe to continue to use on that location. The emission control plan would not catch that. An emission control plan is what is being released, not catching something in advance, which is what the sand probe will do. It's an engineering device that will be ahead of that. With the emission control plan questions, the template that we were given was something that we provided to the council and to the staff, was something that was discussed in the stakeholder feedback meetings. We took that exact template that Chesapeake, Titan, and the staff had taken a look at that day, and that is what we provided. We wanted to be in compliance with what everybody else had intended when we left that meeting as what our plans were going to be. Yes, I did come up here earlier this year, or actually last year, and discuss the equipment that we use on site. I went back and I reviewed some of the other plans that have been submitted for emissions control, and they specify equipment. They specify a FLIR infrared camera. Well, guess what? I have a vendor that's coming in next week that I'm taking a look at, a brand new piece of equipment that is more innovative, more detailed, can see more than that FLIR infrared camera. I didn't want to place that into that document. I wanted to leave that open. Other statements that were in here from another one of the emissions control plans refers to an LDAR program, which is reference to chemical plants and to refineries, not to an oil and gas production location. They set a level in there as 10,000 parts per million per volume of VOCs. These wells in this area will not produce that. That is something that's allocated to a refinery or chemical processing plant that is transporting volatile organic compounds through their piping in that system, not an oil and gas operation. What I'm going to look for is specifically the methane, because while those VOCs are only 5% at max part of the gas, I'm looking for the greater volume that would be released of methane of the 95%. And I'm going to use equipment that I can detect that down even to 5 parts per million, not 10,000 of a smaller piece. I can state that in documentation, and I will provide that to your staff and to the council members by the end of this week on how we can do that. And again, I apologize that the plan that was submitted seemed vague, but again, I was trying to go along with our industry standard and stakeholder meetings that were conducted and follow what was put in place.
I guess some of our concern was with some of the wording was for some reason left off from what Titan had understood was there, and they gave a little more guarantee, and yours was a little less guarantee, and yet before you had stood up and told us how you do the things. And I would like to see you come forward with the infrared thing you're talking about, and then you say, and then you're using that until you find a better deal. As it comes to you, you know, this is what you use. The more I think you let people know what you're doing, the more transparent you are as to what you're doing to fight emission controls. I think it's a win-win situation for you and for the citizens themselves, and that's all I'm asking.
Yes, sir. And one thing on that, they added to the template that was discussed in the stakeholder meeting, not that we took parts out.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions to answer?
Thank you very much, and look forward to seeing your report as well as everybody else. Thank you for your time.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Council.
I had another question here for you.
Yes, sir. And I promise you I won't grill you on the application. One of the things that happened this past weekend with, I think it was in Flower Mound, and maybe it was the first responders showed up but couldn't shut the well down. They had to wait till Williams got there. Is that correct?
They waited, but they had the option to shut it down. There's an emergency shutdown device on the location where all they have to do is hit a button, and it shuts in every well on the site.
Okay, so our first responders, if they show up, they can, and there's a leak going on, they don't have to wait on it, but they can shut it down.
They'll have that option. And also, if they don't want to wait on our personnel to show up, we'll paint all of the main valves on those wells will be painted red. So if anyone came on site of an emergency responder, and we'd be happy to provide a tour of one of our existing locations right now to your emergency responders. And actually, we conduct emergency response drills. Within the last month, we conducted an emergency response drill in the city of Burleson at one of our locations. And we worked with the fire department, the police department, the EMS, also the 911 system, and we tested our own personnel on how they responded to that site. We can do that same operation here. It's pretty interesting to throw a scenario and see how everybody responds, and then after we do that, we'll provide a tour to all the first responders for your city and show them exactly what's on location and what it does and how it works and operates.
Councilman, valve shutoff plans and things like that by city personnel are something that really would need to be part of an air emissions quality or emergency management plan. We don't want to go out to these sites and start flipping things unless we're darn sure what we're flipping.
Well, and if you noticed in the plan that was submitted, there was pictures of emergency shutdown buttons for some locations. Well, those are locations that have already been constructed. Once these sites are constructed, I'll provide the city with an attachment, because I have 70 or so of these that I have with my employees. Each one of my employees carry the same book in their vehicle. Once those sites are constructed, I'll have a attachment that'll go in the back along with all those others that are in there, and that's provided site-specific for the areas that we'll be working at in Louisville.
So would that satisfy what you feel like you would need?
Well, that and the appropriate communication with the fire department or the emergency responders so that they understand that that's part of the protocol that they're supposed to go through if they show up for certain types of events. He's right. The emergency management plan that's in here really relates to a large extent to other situations that aren't necessarily pertinent to this one, but it's a broad, general, kind of almost NIMS-related plan that's designed to be adaptable to any location. What's partly missing is some of the specifics about this particular location and what needs to be there, especially if they're going to have us cutting off valves.
Right. And I guess to that, I would ask not only that you've done what you said you're going to do, coming back and giving us some information in writing that we can disseminate to our citizens, what you're doing, that you would meet with staff and our city manager can coordinate who you need to meet with and start with day one once you're out there in case there is an accident, whatever, what they feel comfortable, they know what they're doing when they're out there so they don't have to wait on someone from your side to get there to help them. Just make sure they feel prepared also. It may be simple to you sometimes. It's kind of like when I sell insurance. I understand it real well, but a lot of people don't. And so in their layman's term, we need to make sure they understand what they need to do so when they can respond, they respond properly, if you would.
Yes, sir, no problem.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Did the Flower Mound emergency management plan contemplate their personnel shutting those valves off in that type of situation?
To be honest, most of the municipal fire departments do not want to even enter the gate until a person from the company, the oil and gas company, or whether it be a pipeline company, shows up on site.
Yeah.
Those Blevy videos.
I suspect what it said.
Keep sitting over there. Okay. Thank you, sir. I think that's all the questions that were asked. Okay, we had a motion second that failed, and then we were around to Mr. Grana. Did you have any other questions?
No, I just wanted to hear what he had to say to address that concern that came up.
Okay.
I still, to Mr. Tierney, we're delaying it for the same reason as last time? Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Watts?
Move to approve as submitted, including the variance.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Watts to approve as submitted, including the variance, and a second by Councilman Durham, I believe it was?
Yes.
Is there any discussion? Councilman Thornhill, you hadn't had a chance. Did you have anything you want to add? Or?
No, sir.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-2. You get that, Julie? Okay.
I would bring up one thing, and then I think Councilman Guarino brought it up, maybe go back and look at our ordinance on that landscaping issue. It seems like it's a variance on every request coming in, and it seems like a good request, but unfortunately our ordinance says otherwise, so we may want to go back and revisit that issue. Thank you.
Take that directly, sir?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So noted. Thank you. Okay. Next item is Visitor Citizen Forum. At this time, any person with business before the council not scheduled on the agenda may speak to the council. No formal action can be taken on these items at this meeting. Don't have any cards filled out. Consent agenda. All the following items on the consent agenda are considered to be self-explanatory by the council and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests. For a citizen to request removal of an item, a speaker card must be filled out and submitted to the city secretary. I do not have any cards filled out, and no council person asked for any item to be pulled. Councilman Thornhill?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion by Councilman Thornhill to approve the consent agenda, and a second by Councilman Tierney. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 10, in regular hearings, consideration of the preliminary plat of the Hawkeye Realty West Louisville Edition, lots 1, 2, and 3, Block A, and lots 1 and 2, Block B, a 49.895 acre tract, zone local commercial, LC, and multifamily, located on the southwest and southeast quadrants of Valley Parkway and Round Grove Road, with a requested variance through Louisville City Code Section 6-103, access management as requested by the owner. The subject property is being preliminary platted for the purpose of subdividing and selling individual lots out of the larger parent tract. A portion of Lot 1, Block A, is proposed for a gas station and convenience store, and Lot 3, Block A, is proposed as a multifamily development. The applicant has applied for a plat-related variance to allow 2 full median opens, a minimum of 600 feet apart, along Valley Parkway in lieu of the required quarter-mile spacing. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the plat and variance at the December 21, 2010 meeting. Recommendation of staff, the council approved the preliminary plat, the Hawkeye Realty West, and the requested variance as set forth in the caption above. I do have a card filled out here by Mr. Robert Payne. Did you want to speak, sir, or were you just here for questions? Just here for questions? Anybody have any questions, Mr. Payne? Then also have one here by Bradley Moss. Are you just here for questions also, or? Okay. Anyone have any questions, those? Councilman Watts?
Move to approve. Second.
Have a motion and a second.
Move to approve with the variances.
Is that a move?
As presented.
Okay, we have a motion to approve as presented by Councilman Watts, a second by Councilman Guarino, wasn't it? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 11 is consideration of a variance to the Louisville City Code, Chapter 2, Administration, Section 2-201, fees related to 764 South Padre Street, located on the east side of Padre Street at the southern terminus south of High School Drive, as requested by Patricia Lambert, the owner. The The subject 0.296 acre parcel is a vacant, unplatted lot at the southern terminus of Podra Street, south of High School Drive. The council rezoned the property R75 from agriculture open and approved a variance to waive the street improvement escrow along Podra Street at the December 7, 2010 council meeting. The owners are in the process of platting the lot in preparation of constructing a single-family home. The owners have applied for a variance to waive the variance fee for the previously granted variance as well as the fee for the current request. Recommendation of staff is that council consider the requested variances as set forth in the caption above. Councilman Thornhill?
Thank you, Mayor. The only problem I have here is if I vote to approve for this tonight, I feel like I'm setting a precedence for everybody that comes forward after this, and people that we did not do this for before might be a little upset, so I'm not going to be in support of this tonight.
Councilman Tierney?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Tierney to approve, a second by Councilman Durham. Any other discussion?
I'd like to make a comment.
Sure.
I'd like to ask staff that if they see these variances to improve areas we're trying to redevelop, that to give us an option about the variance. The reason we're here tonight is because we couldn't make it the last time when the variance came through. We wanted to give them their money back. We couldn't. That's why we had to make it another agenda item. I guess Paul and his wife didn't really realize how long they were going to have to sit there to get their money back. But I will be for it. Thank you.
Okay. City Manager, would you address that a little bit?
Well, Council, it's largely up to the property owner or the person requesting the variance as to whether or not to request a waiver of a fee. We really don't tell everybody that if you want, we'll take a waiver of the fee to the council, because virtually everybody will ask for that, and you will waive all the fees.
I understand that, and that makes sense, but it just seems like we should be able to address that issue. We should have been able to address that issue last meeting somehow, if there's a way for us to do that. Other than that, but I do agree with you. Not everybody should, but in
A follow-up on that, Mayor. I agree with Councilman Guarino, but I think this is the only way we can do it. We did ask them, I think somebody did ask, maybe Councilman Tierney asked them to come back and ask for a waiver. And in the past, we've had this situation come up, and all we've ever been able to come up with is this. And it is a problem for the property owner to have to come back.
Right, and I got to say to staff's defense here, and I think Ms. Lambert would agree 100%, because she called me and I talked with her and told her about the protocol and how the issue had to be worked. And, you know, it's a little confusing to property owners when they haven't done this before, but she was very grateful and said that she had talked with staff and that staff had really worked well with her and helped to explain it to her, and she was very gracious that it was all going to work out and everything. And I think she was explained real well, and I had helped her with it on some. So I think this was really handled well, and I think you're right. You have to do it this way in order for it to be effective, because not everybody's going to want to.
I hear you.
Yeah. Motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. Get that? Thank you. Ms. Lambert, I'm sorry. Did you want to speak?
No.
I had your card. Was it just for questions? Okay, good. We're glad you got this worked out. I remember talking to you on the phone and everything. I'm glad it all worked out. I told you we'd get it worked out for you. We're glad y'all going to build a home down here. Okay. Consideration of ordinance, item 12, consideration of ordinance approving the 2010 annual assessment service plan update for the Louisville-Castle Hills Public Improvement District, number 4. The City Council created Louisville-Castle Hills Public Improvement District number 4 in April 2010. A supplemental assessment service plan was adopted on January 7, 2008. Chapter 372 of the Texas Local Government Code requires that the assessment service plan be updated annually. The plan defines the annual indebtedness and the projected cost of the improvements to be provided by the PID and the manner of assessing the property in the PID for the cost of the improvements. Recommendation is that Council approve the ordinance as set forth in the above caption. Councilman Durham?
Move to approve.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Durham to approve, a second by Councilman Watts. Any discussion? Councilor, is that anything to read on there?
Just need to read it.
I'm sorry?
Just need to read the caption.
Go ahead.
This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Louisville, Texas, updating the assessment service plan and assessment role for Louisville, Castle Hills Public Improvement District Number 4, providing a repealer, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And reports. I don't know if I can skip one biggest thing. Nika. Bob? Keith Lasky? Linda? Keith Curbo?
No, sir.
Is everything doing all right, Carol? I tell you what, those streets are looking better and better every day. I see them out there working on them, sidewalks and everything. They're doing a great job. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, Donna, you look like you're ready to jump on that mic.
I am so ready, Mayor, because
All right.
I want to take the opportunity to invite everyone to come out for the opening of the Medical Center of Louisville Grand Theater. The opening celebrations will be January 14th, 15th, and 16th. We have all kinds of free activities planned, as well as ticketed events, and there will be a listing of all those events on our website, www.cityoflouisville.com.
It's wonderful. Looking really forward to that. Brenda? Mr. Ferris? I think Tim's left, but Tim, you did a very good job tonight, and I hope he gets feeling better soon, sir. Mr. Backus? Councilman Durham?
Nothing, Mayor.
Councilman Grena?
Nothing.
Councilman Watt? City Manager? Councilman Thornhill?
Yes, sir.
Councilman Tierney?
No, sir.
Liz?
No, sir.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't say. Ms. Baxter?
That's
Nothing? Julie? I just want to say that I am really looking forward to the opening of our Medical Center of Louisville Grand Theater. Something we've wanted here a long time in the city, and it's finally come to fruition. We're very proud of it, and we hope everybody can come out and take advantage of it. I think it would be a tremendous asset to our citizens and to the revitalization of our Old Town area. With that, and in accordance with Section 551.072, property acquisition, Section 551.087, deliberation regarding economic development negotiations, we convene into executive session. Oh, he's out there? We need to tell him he can go. Adjourn. Okay, council, will convene us back in regular session. Is there any action to be taken?
No, sir.
Your motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Councilman Watts, second by Councilman Durham. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.